Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Graciela Garcia. Graciela Garcia was born on October 6, 1971, in Mexico. Her family was working class and they hoped to provide a better future for their children. As a result, her parents decided to move to the United States and eventually settled in Hermiston, Oregon. Graciela was too young to remember the hardships of the move. She attended Umatilla High School, a low-cost school where 66% of the student body was Hispanic. Graciela made friends easily and stood out with her outgoing. She later studied business at Blue Mountain College. However, since she was young, she has had a passion for hairdressing and has had the goal of owning her own hair salon. With passion and hard work, Graciela believed that her plans could come true with the right approach. By February 2006, she had become the owner of Carz Beauty Salon. Thanks to her talent and charisma, she quickly became famous in society. Moreover, her professional image also contributed to the prestige of the salon. She is passionate about her work and has a deep understanding of new beauty trends. Thanks to that, she always has a loyal customer base. Some of her customers have become close friends and are often invited to her home. She is respected and loved by everyone in town. Her private life is also filled with joy and happiness. She was pursued by many men when she was young, but she only loved one. That man became her first love. They have two beautiful daughters, Annabelle and Gabriella, often called Gabby. However, that love did not last long. The man left the family. It seems that his feelings for her faded over time. Despite becoming a single mother, she did not feel hopeless. Instead, she focused on self-improvement and pursued a degree in cosmetology. After her divorce, Graciela met Romero Sanchez, a regular customer at the beauty salon where she worked. At first, their relationship was just a friendship. However, Romero later asked Graciela out, and she accepted. Gradually, their relationship became closer and deeper. However, when Graciela introduced Romero to her family, they felt uncomfortable because of his cold and distant attitude. Annabelle and Gabby, Graciela's two daughters, tried many times to connect with Romero, but he did not respond. Graciela's children were confused by such behavior, but they attributed it to personality differences. Graciela's partner seemed to be a strange and unapproachable person, which puzzled the people around her. They could not believe that a woman as full of life and fun as her could be so passionately in love with such a dry person. However, they still respected her decision. When Graciela announced her upcoming marriage, everyone showed their support and shared her joy. Especially Annabelle and Gabby, they wanted to see her happy and loved. On the wedding day, guests also noticed Romero's arrogance and conceit. Some thought he seemed too jealous when trying to steal all the bride's attention. When Graciela's young grandchildren came to congratulate the newlyweds, Romero treated them with contempt, making them feel uncomfortable. Afterwards, Graciela's relatives could not hide their true feelings about this man. Annabelle even openly stated that she did not consider him a stepfather and just wanted to maintain a normal relationship like other families. After the wedding, the Graciela family had two more sons, Arthur and Jacob. They moved in together at Graciela's house. Graciela's youngest son, Jacob, noticed that Romero began to act as if he were the sole owner of the house. Initially, Graciela tried to set personal boundaries, but because she did not like confrontation, she quickly gave in to Romero. He was hot-tempered and never gave in or apologized first. To avoid creating tension in the family, Graciela continued to give in to Romero. However, over time, Graciela began to realize that she had rushed into this marriage. In conversations with her relatives, Graciela confessed that she felt constrained and oppressed. Her husband controlled her and did not let her go anywhere alone. Despite this, Graciela never said she wanted to leave this abusive relationship. It seems she still loves him. Graciela's family gradually realized that she had become attached to the wrong man. Romero not only controlled Graciela but also lived off of his wife, much to her family's dismay. Romero was a skilled manipulator, constantly stalking Graciela, controlling her correspondence, and even threatening to break up the friendship between Graciela and her friends. He did not want to let her go anywhere, or sometimes he would show up unexpectedly, as if testing her loyalty. His jealousy became excessive and uncontrollable. She felt ashamed and self-conscious because of his behavior, and as a result, she limited her social life. She only communicated with her family and no longer connected with friends or colleagues as before. This seriously affected her work, as her profession required her to communicate regularly with clients and attend various events. Her friends and colleagues noticed a change in Graciela. She was no longer the cheerful and bright woman she used to be. She looked sad and tired, and she was clearly unhappy. Her children also noticed that she had changed in both her mood and appearance. They saw that she had lost her independence and confidence. After discussing it with each other, Graciela's family agreed that they did not like Romero. However, since he was Graciela's choice, there was not much they could do to change the situation. They could only respect her decision. Other relatives also expressed doubts about Romero, but no one knew how to help her in this situation. Graciela and Romero needed help with their relationship, and Gabby had mentioned this to her mother. However, Graciela believed that she would manage her personal life on her own. In 2018, Graciela decided to move her salon to her home for convenience. However, her family was skeptical as they had not heard about the plan for 12 years. Some customers commented that Romero's constant presence at the salon made them feel uncomfortable. Some people thought that Graciela moved the salon home to solve the problem, but others doubted that the idea came from Romero. However, Graciela was happy about the change and believed that working from home would bring her closer to Jacob and Romero. At the end of the year, she and her husband renovated a room into a beauty salon, completing it in May 2019. The salon closed shortly after, but Graciela's reputation remained intact, and rumors of her reopening attracted many customers, including new ones. Graciela was delighted with her career success, but became increasingly secretive about her personal life. However, after 17 years of marriage, Graciela and Romero decided to separate. Romero always kept in touch with their children and saw them regularly. Graciela and her ex-husband shared custody of their youngest son, while the other children were grown and living on their own, but they still kept in regular contact with their family and participated in family activities. Graciela went through the divorce with a calm and optimistic attitude. After the divorce, Graciela focused on developing her beauty salon and spent her free time taking care of her family and close friends. On the morning of November 9, 2019, Romero visited Graciela's eldest daughter, Annabelle, and reported Graciela missing. According to Romero, Graciela and he had been together the night before. However, when he woke up the next morning, he was surprised to find that she was no longer there. Romero tried to contact Graciela but received no response. Annabelle was shocked by the news and Romero's reaction. He cried and appeared distressed. This made Annabelle feel strange because Romero usually did not show emotions in front of them. Romero also said that Graciela had been acting strangely recently, even hinting that she might have found another man in her life. Annabelle felt that Romero's words were insincere and his tears seemed fake, which made her start to doubt his behavior and worry about her mother. Romero usually avoided communicating with his wife's children. But after a while, he changed and decided to connect with them. After Romero left, Annabelle decided to inform the rest of the family about what had happened. Graciela's family gathers to find out what's happening to her. Graciela's car was parked in the driveway. If she decided to leave Romero, she would definitely use her own car. Another thing that surprised them was the neatness of Graciela's house. Everything was perfectly arranged and in order, far beyond normal. However, this was completely contrary to Graciela's personality and lifestyle, because if she went somewhere, her belongings and accessories would be scattered all over the room. Normally, Graciela would spend a lot of time in front of the mirror choosing her outfit for the day. However, the fact that she went out without any jewelry worried the whole family, and they wondered why. As she walked around the house, Gabby noticed something strange. The large blanket had been put in the washing machine, something her mother never did. The blanket was too heavy and someone else had washed it, apparently Romero, which made Gabby suspicious. Romero did not explain this, saying that he did not pay attention to such details. But then people realized that several important items were missing from the house, including Graciela's passport, driver's license, and cell phone. This raised further suspicions about Romero's actions. On November 11th, Annabelle contacted law enforcement at the police station and discovered something surprising. Although Romero had known about his wife's disappearance since the 9th or possibly earlier, he had not notified the police. Therefore, Annabelle was the first to file a missing persons report to her mother. Another incident raised concerns about Graciela's safety. She asked Gabby to pick her up, but even though Gabby said it would take some time because of the distance, Graciela continued to ask. Gabby was surprised by this unexpected request for help. Graciela explained that everything was fine and that her request was just a result of an argument with Romero. When they met, Graciela appeared relaxed, smiling and asking her daughter not to worry. She believed that arguments between lovers were just a form of renewal in their relationship. However, after they broke up, Gabby remained uneasy and became increasingly worried about her mother. The investigation began after Annabelle contacted the police. This caused the relationship between Graciela's family and Romero to deteriorate. Romero seemed angry that Graciela's family had notified law enforcement about her disappearance. Romero gave an official statement about his wife's disappearance. He said that Graciela had either wanted to be alone or that she had moved in with another man and would be back soon. That was his answer every time someone asked. However, the police did not ignore this report. Officers launched an investigation into the missing Graciela's disappearance, considering the possibility that she may have been a victim of a crime. They started by searching her house, where her relatives reported that only a few personal items were missing, without finding any other suspicious signs. The investigation expanded to include interviews with her children, Romero, and other close family members, including her ex-husband. However, no useful information was gathered from these interviews. While everyone expressed doubts about Romero's behavior, he cooperated fully with the detectives, allowing them to search his home, answering questions, providing his DNA, and taking a polygraph test. Despite this cooperation, there was insufficient evidence to prove his involvement in the case. Further investigation revealed that Graciela's phone last sent a signal near a bridge in Washington on November 9th at 12:30 p.m. After that, her phone was turned off. Her bank accounts and social media accounts showed no activity, suggesting that she had not accessed since her disappearance. Hundreds of witnesses were questioned, and all the places she regularly visited were checked, but no one had any information about her whereabouts. The investigators found her disappearance to be highly suspicious, as it seemed she had vanished without leaving any clues. For months into the investigation, the Hermiston Police Department announced that they had found no reliable information about Graciela's last whereabouts. Although Romero had not reported her missing, he was not accused of any wrongdoing. Graciela's family became increasingly frustrated with the lack of progress despite their constant contact with authorities throughout the incident. However, as time passed, these updates became less frequent and eventually stopped, forcing Graciela's children to take initiative and contact the police station themselves to inquire about the status of the case. In an effort to reinvigorate the search, Graciela's family turned to the media in March 2020, seeking public assistance and attention. They hoped that by sharing their story, they might gather new information. Graciela's daughter Gabby was mainly in charge of communicating with the press. She expressed her family's increasing frustration with the lack of progress in the case and criticized the police for not keeping them informed for such a long time. She urged investigators to focus more on finding her mother, Graciela, and to take a closer look at the suspicious circumstances surrounding disappearance. Graciela's family suspected something was wrong, as the condition of her belongings was strange and unusual in her home. However, it was unclear who would want to harm her, as Graciela did not appear to have any enemies. The family also believed that Graciela would not have left on her own, as she would have contacted them to reassure. Posters and flyers describing Graciela were scattered throughout the city in search of clues to the case. Graciela, who is 49 years old, Latina, 1.6 meters tall, 62 kilograms, and with dyed blonde hair. Local residents were also asked to be vigilant and report any information that might help the investigation. Her children were so concerned that they asked for a new detective team to take over the case, as they suspected bias in collaboration with a suspect, Romero, who was acquainted with the original investigators. The Graciela family expressed concerns about several inconsistencies in the investigation, including the fact that Romero's phone was turned off on the day of Graciela's disappearance. Additionally, Romero's calm behavior raised suspicions, as it didn't with the typical reaction expected from someone whose loved one has suddenly gone missing. As a result, the Graciela family demanded that the suspect be arrested immediately. Police Chief Jason Hermiston responded to allegations surrounding Graciela's disappearance, confirming that her case is being treated as suspicious and possibly involving foul play. However, he emphasized that this is just one theory and that the investigation remains impartial, driven by evidence. Hermiston also dismissed claims of social connections between Romero and law enforcement as baseless. Hermiston noted that the spread of misinformation has hindered the investigation. Certain information must be kept confidential, and authorities have sought assistance from the FBI. The police chief expressed frustration over public criticism of the police's actions. Separately, Gabby organized a fundraiser to hire a private detective, a move seen as a critique of the police's handling of the investigation. This perceived criticism suggested that the police were not doing enough to find Graciela. 1 year after Graciela disappeared, her family organized a memorial gathering. Here, friends and people who knew her shared stories about her lively and cheerful personality. They prayed for her safe return, lit candles, and later placed signs outside the police station, urging authorities to continue the search for Graciela Garcia. In September 2023, a major development in the case occurred when Romero Sanchez was severely injured in an attack and that required surgery. There was speculation that the shooter was Mason Garcia, Graciela's brother. The attack suggests that Graciela's family had become frustrated with the lack of progress in the investigation and took matters into their own hands, potentially leading to further tragedy. The disappearance of Graciela Garcia remains an unsolved mystery, leaving her family in a state of agonizing. This has significantly affected the health and mental well-being of her family. Living without knowing what happened to a loved one can be more challenging than coping with a confirmed loss. It remains unknown whether Graciela is alive or not. Her children continue to hope that the truth will soon be revealed and justice will be served to the criminals. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Maria Munoz. Maria Munoz was born on January 25, 1989, to Marisol Rodriguez and Jorge Luis Munoz, and was one of 3 children. Growing up in a loving and vibrant household in Puerto Rico, Maria faced a devastating loss when her mother passed away at a young age. It was around this time that she met Joel Pellet. Despite this hardship, Maria took on the responsibility of caring for her siblings, Marisol Munoz and Peter Hernandez. Maria and Pellet, who was 11 years older, initially met in Puerto Rico, where Maria was born and raised. At the time, Pellet was a nursing student with ambitious dreams, and Maria was also pursuing a nursing career. Despite their age difference, they got married in 2011. Following their marriage, the couple relocated to Laredo, Texas, where Pellet secured a prestigious position as a nurse anesthetist at a local hospital, earning a substantial income. Their newfound financial stability enabled them to live a life of opulence, marked by luxury cars and extravagant vacations. Maria Munoz, a devoted mother, lived in Laredo, Texas, with her husband Joel Pellet, 40, and their two young sons. After leaving her job, she dedicated herself to caring for her family full-time. Maria adored her boys and prioritized their needs, taking them to the park daily and reading to them before bedtime. Although she savored every moment at home, she also made time for her passion, playing the piano. Despite her contentment, Maria held on to her aspiration of furthering her education and resuming her nursing career. Pellet's relationship seemed perfect, but beneath the surface, a different story emerged. After his second son's birth in 2018, people noticed changes in his behavior. He lost weight, gained muscle, and became flirtatious with other women. He stopped posting family photos, instead sharing solo pictures, giving the impression of a single, carefree life. Pellet's colleagues noticed his growing closeness to surgical nurse Janet Arando. As time passed, it became clear they were having a secretive affair. In 2020, Maria found airline tickets Pellet bought for himself and Janet to travel to Europe. This discovery left Maria shattered, feeling betrayed and devastated by their decade-long facade. She sought a therapist's help to cope with her emotional turmoil and was prescribed medication to support her mental health struggles. Around this time, Maria started writing in journals to cope with her thoughts and feelings. As tensions between Pellet and Maria increased, a confrontation occurred on September 19, 2020, when Maria visited Janet's house and found Pellet's car parked in the driveway. Maria confronted Pellet, forcing him to choose between her and Janet. Pellet chose Janet, leading to an argument that prompted Janet to call the police. However, Maria and Pellet had left before the police arrived. Later, the police called Maria while she was in the car with Pellet, and they could hear him yelling at her in the background. Once they got home, Pellet's anger escalated, and he punched a hole in Maria's car windshield, demonstrating his intense anger. The next morning, on September 20th, Maria sent Pellet a text message stating her intention to hire a lawyer to resolve their situation. However, Pellet responded, suggesting they handle the matter without lawyers, as he believed it would be too expensive. Just hours after their text conversation, Pellet appeared to have a change of heart. He emailed Maria, expressing his profound sadness and inner turmoil. In the email, he conveyed his desire to have a genuine and calm conversation with Maria, free from argument. Maria replied, and they agreed to meet the following evening, around 5 p.m. on Monday, September 21st. Before meeting him, Maria was extremely nervous and messaged her friend Yasmin Martinez about the planned meeting. Unfortunately, the encounter ended in a terrifying way. The next day, September 22nd, 2020, Pellet frantically called 911, saying his wife might have taken prescription pills and was no longer breathing. Officer DEA Cruz arrived at Pellet's house around 1:40 a.m., with his body cam recording the entire scene. He found Pellet at the top of the stairs, near the main bedroom, where he was still wearing his green hospital scrubs and performing CPR on his wife. Their two sons were asleep in nearby rooms. Once the paramedics arrived, they took over CPR efforts on Maria. Officer asked Pellet about pills Maria took. Pellet fetched a bottle with clonazepam prescription from the bathroom, but it was in his name, not Maria's. The bottle was unusually back in the cabinet. Body cam footage showed Pellet pocketing the pill container. DEA crews suspected he concealed something. A needle catheter on the stairs and a medical bag with syringes outside a clinical setting raised more questions. Pellet informed the officers that Maria had been battling severe depression lately, which had taken a toll on her mental health. According to him, her desperation to deal with her overwhelming emotions led her to take the pills as a last resort. Despite efforts, Maria was pronounced dead at 3:58 a.m. Pellet was questioned, explaining he and Maria had a conversation, became intimate, and he took a shower. When he returned, Maria was unresponsive and not breathing. Officer notices Pellet's suspicious behavior, excessive sweating and evasive answers, contrasting with others. This raises suspicions, and Sergeant Lismata takes him in for questioning. Upon arrival, Pellet was left alone in the interrogation room for a period before an officer entered. Unbeknownst to Pellet, his actions were being recorded on video. When the officers reviewed the footage, they were shocked to see Pellet's sudden, extreme behavior. He began screaming, crying, hitting the walls, and throwing furniture around the room. His loud, out-of-control outburst caused a stir among people in the hallway and nearby rooms, who were frightened by the commotion coming from his room. Sergeant Louis Mata spoke with Pellet at 4 a.m. Pellet confessed to having an affair with Janet, whom he'd left the family home for 5 months prior. Maria knew about it. Pellet visited the family home, they talked and became intimate. He gave her clonazepam for anxiety and depression, but didn't know how much she took. He found her unresponsive 10 minutes later. After questioning, Maria's autopsy was performed just 8 hours after her death. This timely autopsy allowed for detection of any substances in her stomach contents. The results revealed a surprise: no pill fragments, but a small, red pinprick mark on her elbow, suggesting an injection. This finding shifted the investigation's focus. Maria's journal, found by investigators, revealed her anxiety and depression struggles. Her writings exposed her deep love for her husband and desire to save their family despite his infidelity. Entries disclosed her husband's abuse, her grief, and her longing to escape sadness. One plea read, "I don't want to be sad anymore. Bring me laughter, bring me peace, bring me happiness again." The day before Maria Munoz's untimely death, she wrote in her journal, revealed her desire to live and move forward with her life. There was no hint of suicide or plans to end her life. As a result, after reviewing her journal, investigators initially ruled out suicide as a possibility. They needed more information to understand what had really happened. Sergeants Mata and Cruz received toxicology test results contradicting Pellet's claim about Maria having clonazepam. Instead, the tests revealed 7 surgical drugs in her system: morphine, Demerol, Versed, propofol, ketamine, Leanne, and Naren. Notably, propofol and ketamine are sedatives and pain management drugs, typically used intravenously during operations. The discovery of propofol in Maria's body was the most startling revelation for the investigators. Given his profession as a nurse anesthetist, they suspected that Pellet would have had access to the drug. Dr. Hunzinger, who had worked with Pellet and was familiar with propofol, was shocked by the unusually high amount found in Maria's system, the highest he had ever seen. This led the doctors to strongly suspect that propofol was the direct cause of Maria's death, as Pellet would have known the correct dosage to sedate someone or cause an overdose. Furthermore, a small mark on Maria's arm suggested that she may have been injected with a substance. The investigators believed they had sufficient evidence to arrest Pellet for his wife's murder, based on the toxicological report, his suspicious behavior, and Maria's journal. An arrest warrant was quickly obtained, and DEA crews promptly apprehended Pellet, who offered no resistance, almost as if he had anticipated his arrest. Pellet was then taken to the police station, marking the beginning of a new phase in the investigation as law enforcement officials prepared to question him further about the events surrounding Maria's tragic death. The trial began on March 21, 2023, with both the prosecution and defense presenting their arguments. The prosecution team, comprising only women and dubbed Maria's team, built a strong case against Pellet by using Maria Munoz's journal entries. This approach aimed to showcase Maria's personality to the jury, highlighting her qualities as a wife and mother. Through her journals, the prosecutors painted a picture of Maria as a caring, intelligent, and excellent mother, conveying her lively spirit to the jurors. During the trial, prosecutors suspected that Pellet drugged Maria by putting substances in her drink, making her sleepy. After she became unconscious, they believed he injected propofol into her arm. Prosecutors also thought Pellet deliberately delayed calling 911 so that responders would be unable to rescue Maria when they arrived. The journals helped prosecutors understand the challenges Maria faced, strengthening their resolve to seek justice in her case. Pellet's lawyer, Roberto Bali, argued that his client wanted to reconcile with wife Maria Munoz before her death, citing uncertain cause of death and insufficient evidence. Bali noted Pellet gave Maria a drug to reverse overdoses on the night she died, and both struggled with addiction, with no signs of force or coercion. After investigating Maria's social circles, friends, and family, it became clear that she was not a drug addict. It was evident that Pellet was the only person who could have provided her with the substantial quantity of propofol found in her system. Additionally, authorities convinced Pellet's girlfriend, Janet Avendano, a surgical nurse, to testify against him. She revealed that Pellet had confided in her, admitting that he gave Maria something to calm her down. Avendano also confirmed that Pellet had brought drugs, including propofol, home from work. The jury reached a verdict in under an hour, following a 9-day trial. On March 30th, 2023, the jury found Pellet guilty of Maria's murder. He was subsequently sentenced to life in prison on April 27, 2023, plus an additional 10 years and a $10,000 fine for tampering with evidence. Joel Pellet is currently imprisoned for life at a Texas Department of Criminal Justice facility, serving time for his cruel actions. His imprisonment serves as a reminder that criminals will be held accountable and that Maria's memory will be honored through the pursuit of truth and justice. The reason behind Maria's murder is still unclear, but according to the prosecution, Joel Pellet killed his wife to end their marriage and start a new life with his girlfriend, Janet Avendano. In the end, justice prevailed, and the verdict ensured that Pellet was punished for his crime. The jury's decision brings some closure to this tragic case, sending a clear message that such brutal acts will not go unpunished. The conviction highlights the importance of upholding justice and serves as a warning to those who commit similar crimes that they will face the full force of the law. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Ryan Poston. Ryan Poston was born on December 30th, 1982, in Fort Mitchell, Kentucky, to Lisa and Jay Poston. He had a strong and loving bond with his three sisters, Allison, Catherine, and Elizabeth, throughout his life. Growing up, Ryan had the opportunity to travel extensively and attend schools in Switzerland and the Philippines. This exposure broadened his horizons and gave him an adventurous spirit. Ryan was also known for his striking good looks, which, coupled with his charismatic personality, made him stand out in a crowd. After graduating from high school, Ryan attended Indiana University, where he earned a degree in political science, history, and geography. He excelled academically and graduated with honors in 2005. Following in the footsteps of his family members, Ryan pursued a career in law. He enrolled in the Salmon P. Chase College of Law at Northern Kentucky University, driven by his admiration for the legal profession. His esteemed grandfather and uncle, both practicing attorneys, were his role models. Ryan's ultimate goal was to own a successful law firm. While in Cincinnati, Ohio, Ryan dedicated himself to helping people who couldn't afford expensive lawyers. Despite being young, he had already built a strong reputation, and many sought his advice. He worked hard to ensure everyone had access to fair and competent legal representation, regardless of their financial situation. After a painful breakup in 2011, Ryan turned to his cousin Carissa for comfort and support. During a visit to Lexington, Kentucky to spend time with her, he met Shayna Hubers, a Lexington native, and his life took an unexpected turn. Shayna Hubers embodied the quintessential Southern girl, renowned for her outgoing personality and effortless ability to form friendships. Her warm and charming demeanor naturally drew people to her. After graduating high school in 2009 with a full scholarship, she continued her education at the University of Kentucky, majoring in psychology, before pursuing her master's degree in psychology at Eastern Kentucky University. Despite their 8-year age gap, Ryan was 29, while Shayna was just 21. Their feelings for each other grew increasingly undeniable. With each visit Ryan made to see his cousin Carissa in Lexington, he found himself devoting more time to Shayna. As they spent more time together, their bond deepened. Shayna began spending more time in Highland Heights, the Kentucky suburb where Ryan lived. Every weekend, she would pack a bag and visit Ryan's home, dedicating herself to taking care of him, cooking his meals, and cleaning his living space. As time went on, Ryan and Shayna's relationship grew stronger, and he took her to meet his parents. She was over the moon with excitement, telling her friends all about Ryan and even saying she wanted to become Mrs. Ryan Poston. But their promising future came to a tragic end on October 12, 2012. In a panicked call to the police, Shayna admitted to fatally shooting her boyfriend, Ryan. The details she shared revealed a devastating scene of domestic violence that had spun out of control. According to Shayna, Ryan had tried to physically abuse her, dragging her out of the house when she attempted to gather her belongings. She told the 911 dispatcher that Ryan had confronted her with a gun, leading to a physical fight. In the heat of the moment, Shayna managed to grab the gun, but she was intimidated by Ryan's size. In a state of panic, she pulled the trigger, ultimately shooting Ryan. Shayna admitted that she believed Ryan's death was inevitable, so she claimed she wanted to end his suffering. She told the 911 dispatcher that Ryan was in distress, making unusual sounds, which motivated her to shoot him several more times. Afterwards, she revealed that she left the gun on a bookshelf. Minutes after Shayna called 911 to report that she had shot her boyfriend, officers were sent to the scene. When they arrived, they told Shayna to come out of the apartment with her hands up. At first, she was hesitant, but she eventually followed their orders. As she walked out, they told her to lie face down on the ground. It was clear that Shayna was very upset as she complied with their instructions. After the officers handcuffed Shayna and put her in the back of their patrol car, they entered the apartment and found Ryan Poston's body on the dining room floor, covered in blood. Crime scene investigators arrived and examined Ryan's condo, which looked a bit messy, but nothing out of the ordinary for a 29-year-old man. They found that Ryan had a concealed carry permit and owned weapons, including the Sig Sauer semi-automatic gun that Shayna used to shoot him. Based on the evidence they gathered, the investigators concluded that Ryan was sitting at the table when Shayna opened fire. They knew this because of the blood found on the table. However, the fact that several items on the dining room table were not disturbed raised doubts about Shayna's story. If there had been a fight, the items would have been disturbed. The crime scene investigators thoroughly searched Ryan's apartment, gathering every detail. At the same time, police officers questioned Ryan's neighbors to see if they had any information that could help the case. One of Ryan's neighbors, a woman named Nikki, spoke to the detective and provided some useful insights. Nikki knew Shayna well and thought that Shayna was more committed to Ryan than he was to her. According to Nikki, the couple often had loud, angry arguments that disturbed the neighborhood. Nikki remembered a specific incident several months ago when Shayna came to her door in tears, saying she was afraid of Ryan. Shayna had told Nikki that she and Ryan had a violent fight, during which he lifted her up and threw her down the hallway, causing her injuries. Nikki believed Shayna and encouraged her to report the abuse to the police, but Shayna decided not to take legal action. At the police station, detectives took Shayna to an interrogation room to question her about the shooting of her boyfriend, Ryan. Before starting the interview, the officers read Shayna her Miranda rights, reminding her that she had the right to have an attorney present. Shayna chose to exercise this right and asked for a lawyer to be present. While waiting in the interrogation room, Shayna filled out some paperwork under the supervision of a detective. Despite having asked for a lawyer, Shayna still chatted with the detective. When asked who the victim was, Shayna calmly replied that it was the man she had killed. This response showed a clear lack of emotion, as it was obvious she knew the victim was Ryan, her long-term boyfriend. Shayna remained in the interrogation room with the detectives, maintaining that she had acted in self-defense. She recounted the events of the previous night, describing how Ryan had allegedly grabbed her by the throat and violently thrown her around the apartment. At some point during the investigation, the detective temporarily left the room, replaced by another officer. Shayna began to reveal more details about her encounter with Ryan to this new officer. She alleged that Ryan had been extremely aggressive prior to the shooting, hurling insults at her, calling her crazy, and taunting her while brandishing a gun. Shayna believed that Ryan's behavior that night was fueled by drug use, which contributed to his violent outbursts. Throughout the interview, Shayna consistently stuck to her version of the events that culminated in the shooting. She claimed that Ryan was sitting at the dining room table, handling ammunition for his Sig Sauer pistol, when she noticed him staring aggressively at her from across the table. At that moment, she became aware of his intentions and realized he was trying to evict her from his condo. Shayna confessed to picking up the gun and firing it in the midst of the chaos, hitting Ryan with a single bullet. Shayna continued to describe the incident, claiming that after shooting Ryan once, she saw him twitching. Believing it was necessary to end his suffering, she fired multiple shots, ultimately killing him. In her confession, Shayna told the detective that Ryan was vain and had mentioned wanting a nose job, so she decided to grant him his wish. She deliberately aimed her gun at his face and pulled the trigger, essentially giving him the rhinoplasty he had requested. During the intense interrogation, Shayna expressed deep concerns about the impact of the incident on her academic performance and her future romantic relationships. She confided in the detective that having a dead boyfriend would make it difficult for her to find someone to marry, especially if they discovered she had killed him in self-defense. Despite her statement, the detective arrested and charged her with Ryan's murder. Shayna seemed genuinely surprised by her arrest, maintaining that she had acted in self-defense. In 2015, Shayna's trial began, and the courtroom was filled with anticipation. The prosecutor compared Shayna to Jodi Arias, who had also been charged with murdering her boyfriend, Travis Alexander, emphasizing the striking similarities between the two cases. This heightened the tension in the courtroom as everyone awaited the outcome. The prosecutor argued that Shayna was fixated on her ex-boyfriend, Ryan. According to the prosecution, Ryan dominated Shayna's thoughts, and she constantly discussed him. During the trial, the prosecutor presented testimony from Ryan's friends, who described his plans to end the relationship with Shayna and his efforts to avoid her phone calls and messages. Despite this, Shayna continued to visit Ryan's condo in Highland Heights uninvited, including on the night of the murder. The prosecution introduced evidence that Ryan had scheduled a date with Audrey Bolt, a former Miss Ohio, on the night of the murder. This information supported the prosecution's theory that Shayna was driven by jealousy and anger towards Ryan's potential new love interest. Audrey Bolt testified that she was supposed to meet Ryan for drinks at a bar on the night of the murder, but he failed to appear. It wasn't until later that she learned of his murder. The prosecution also presented evidence that Ryan had repeatedly expressed his desire to end the relationship with Shayna in the days leading up to his death. Ryan had sought advice from his father, Jay, on how to handle the situation, and Jay had counseled him to be kind to Shayna to avoid a messy breakup. However, it appears that Shayna continued to exert control over Ryan on the day he was killed. The prosecution presented evidence of several text exchanges between Ryan and Shayna, in which Ryan clearly told her he did not want to see her that weekend because he had other commitments. Nevertheless, Shayna showed up uninvited at his condo, which was not unusual for her. The argument that ensued reached a boiling point when Ryan explicitly told Shayna their relationship was over and she could no longer control him. Prosecutors argued that this statement enraged Shayna, prompting her to pick up a gun and fatally shoot Ryan. During Shayna's trial for murdering Ryan, the prosecution showed a video of her being questioned by the police to suggest she was a cold-blooded killer. In the video, Shayna's calm behavior and responses seemed to back up the idea that she had intentionally taken Ryan's life. The footage showed her dancing and singing along to music, which seemed unusual for someone who had just killed their loved one in self-defense. Normally, people in such a situation would be distraught and crying due to the loss of life and the weight of their actions. The prosecution's goal in showing the video was to make Shayna appear detached and unemotional, implying that her actions were not those of someone who had acted in self-defense. They claimed that her lack of tears and carefree behavior proved her guilt. However, this interpretation was open to debate and up to the jury to decide. In the end, the video was a key piece of evidence in the prosecution's case against Shayna, but it was just one part of the evidence presented during the trial. Shayna's defense team stuck to a clear storyline throughout her trial, arguing that Ryan was the aggressive and violent one on the night of the incident, leading Shayna to shoot him. To back up this claim, they built a picture of Ryan's mental state, suggesting that a mix of drugs he was taking, including anti-anxiety medications and amphetamines, contributed significantly to his behavior. The defense team presented the jury with autopsy results showing the presence of these drugs in Ryan's system, strengthening their argument that the drugs influenced his actions. An expert toxicologist testified for Shayna, stating that a combination of drugs like anti-anxiety medications and amphetamines could cause someone to become violent and paranoid. This testimony aimed to provide a reasonable explanation for Shayna's actions, implying that she may not have intended to harm Ryan. During Shayna's trial in April 2015, the prosecution grew increasingly worried that she might be acquitted due to being a smart, young, and attractive woman, and that her self-defense claim might persuade the jury. However, on April 23rd, the jury delivered a guilty verdict, convicting Shayna of murdering her boyfriend, Ryan Poston. At the August 2015 sentencing hearing, Shayna persisted in shifting the blame for Ryan's death onto him, which infuriated his friends and family. Despite the overwhelming evidence presented during the trial, Shayna stuck to her claim of innocence and refused to acknowledge her role in the events. Under Kentucky law, a defendant who is deemed a victim of domestic violence can be eligible for early parole after serving just 20% of their sentence. However, the judge in this case ruled that Shayna did not meet the criteria, characterizing her crime as a premeditated murder. As a result, the judge handed down a 40-year prison sentence, making Shayna eligible for parole in 17 years, when she will be 41 years old in 2032. Shayna Hubers was sentenced, but she appealed for a new trial, which was granted by a judge in August 2016. The reason for the appeal was that one of the jurors had failed to disclose their felony conviction, which is against Kentucky law since felons are not allowed to serve on juries. Following a 4-month delay, Shayna's second trial for the murder of Ryan Poston began in August 2018. During the opening arguments, Shayna's defense attorney claimed that throughout her year-and-a-half-long relationship with Ryan, Shayna tried her best to make him happy. However, their romance suffered because of it. The attorney stated that on the very first night Shayna and Ryan met, he was violent toward her, both physically and sexually. This incident had a lasting effect on her, and it took her several weeks to respond to his messages after that. Shayna's defense lawyers claimed that her high school experience of sexual assault led to a history of alcohol abuse and promiscuity. They argued that this traumatic event contributed to her behavior on the night of the murder. The defense team aimed to create a sympathetic image of Shayna, highlighting her troubled past and arguing that she was not responsible for her actions on the night of the murder. They sought to challenge the prosecution's narrative, suggesting that her behavior was the result of a combination of factors, including a history of abuse and a toxic relationship with Ryan. The defense portrayed Shayna as a victim of domestic violence at Ryan's hands, rather than as a cold-blooded murderer. They claimed that her actions were driven not by a desire for revenge or financial gain, but by years of abuse by her former partner. According to the defense, Ryan constantly criticized Shayna about her weight and chest size, pressuring her to enlarge her breasts. This constant pressure contributed to her low self-esteem and feelings of inadequacy, the defense argued. The defense claimed that Ryan and Shayna's sexual relationship was troubled, marked by frequent disagreements and frustration from both parties. According to the defense, Ryan yearned for a more romantic and intimate connection, but this desire was not fulfilled, leading to a growing rift between them. To support this claim, the defense presented evidence that Shayna had sought an injection to improve her romantic life, which was meant to address the couple's sexual difficulties and strengthen their bond. However, the defense argued that Ryan's consistent rejection and disinterest worsened the strain on their relationship, causing Shayna to become increasingly frustrated and isolated. Moreover, the defense alleged that Ryan often broke up with Shayna, only to engage in conversations with other women. In contrast, the prosecution stated that while Ryan Poston was not a perfect boyfriend, he was not abusive. They argued that Shayna did not act in self-defense when she fatally shot Ryan, but rather because he had ended their relationship that night. The prosecution claimed that it was time for Ryan to break up with Shayna, as she refused to leave him alone despite the breakup, demonstrating her inability to move on from the relationship. One of Ryan's co-workers testified that the breakup between Ryan and Shayna would be permanent this time because Ryan had always avoided breaking up with Shayna in person. According to the co-worker, Shayna had made every effort to keep Ryan. The prosecution presented text messages in which Shayna told her friends that she and Ryan's romantic encounters had brought them closer together. However, Shayna testified that these encounters had actually driven them apart. In another text message exchange, Shayna asked Ryan for sex, but Ryan was taking antidepressants, which had reduced his sex drive due to the medication's side effects. However, when Shayna testified, she claimed that Ryan had forced her into sexual intercourse. After 5 hours of deliberation, the jury found Shayna guilty of murdering Ryan despite contradictory testimonies and conflicting evidence. During the sentencing hearing, Shayna's mother emotionally addressed the judge, sharing stories of her daughter's singing talent, which had earned her multiple college scholarships. Through tears, she begged the jury to consider granting Shayna parole, arguing that her daughter still had the potential to positively impact people's lives. The mother acknowledged, however, that her pleas did not minimize the grief and pain experienced by Ryan Poston's family. Shayna was given a life sentence with no chance of parole. As part of her sentence, she must serve at least 17 years before becoming eligible for parole in 2032. She is currently serving her sentence at the Kentucky Correctional Institute for Women in Pewee Valley, Kentucky. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Sarah Stern. Sarah Elizabeth Sarah was born on March 24, 1997, in Neptune City, New Jersey, to Michael and Susan Sarah. As their only child, Sarah received all the love and attention from her parents, who had been unable to have more children due to health issues. Sarah grew up to be a lively, cheerful, and outgoing child. She was involved in various activities, including school theater, photography, drawing, swimming, and softball. Her passion was art, and she aspired to become an artist or designer. After graduating from high school, Sarah enrolled in a local college to pursue her dream. Tragedy struck in the autumn of 2013 when Sarah's mother, Susan, passed away after a long battle with cancer. Despite periods of remission, the disease ultimately took its toll. This devastating loss was a tremendous shock to the family, particularly for Sarah, who was extremely close to her mother. After a period of struggling with depression, Sarah began to support her ailing father and care for their beloved dog, Buddy. As time passed, her life started to improve, and she set goals for the future. Upon graduating from college, Sarah planned to apply to a prestigious university in New York. Before pursuing further education, she hoped to travel the world, with a particular interest in visiting Canada and possibly even living there for a while. Her father, Michael Sarah, frequently traveled out of state for work, often for weeks at a time. However, he never worried about leaving Sarah alone, as she was a grown and independent young woman, and their town was considered safe. But on the night of December 3, 2016, around 2:30 a.m., an unsettling incident occurred. A concerned citizen reported an abandoned vehicle on the Belmar Bridge along Highway 35, prompting the police to become involved. The area was usually deserted at night, which made the lone, empty vehicle stand out. A taxi driver, who was taking a shortcut home across the old bridge on the outskirts, noticed the car parked on the side of the road. He stopped to see if anyone needed assistance, but found the vehicle empty with no one around. Concerned that the driver might have jumped into the water below, a tragic occurrence that had happened before in this spot, the taxi driver called the police. Police officers responding to the scene found the car's keys in the ignition and no signs of blood or struggle, leading them to initially believe that the owner may have intentionally left the car on the bridge to jump into the river. To investigate further, they checked the car's ownership and discovered it belonged to 85-year-old Lily Sarah, who lived in a nearby town. When officers visited Lily's home, they found her alive and well. She explained that she hadn't driven the car in years due to poor eyesight, and her 19-year-old granddaughter, Sarah, was the frequent driver. Lily tried to contact Sarah but was unable to reach her because her phone was turned off. She then provided the officers with her son's address, where Sarah lived, and informed them that Sarah was likely alone, as her father was out of town for work and wouldn't return until the following week. Sarah was nowhere to be found at her home. Although the back door was open, an initial search of the house didn't turn up any signs of foul play. However, they did find the family dog locked in one of the bedrooms, whining. Despite the open back door, there were no signs of disarray or struggle, and no evidence of an intruder. As the news of her disappearance spread, Sarah's father, Michael, rushed back home on the next available flight. Upon his arrival, he confirmed that everything was still in its place and nothing was missing. Notably, all of Sarah's personal belongings, including her passport, driver's license, and mobile phone, were still at the house. The police shared their initial concerns with Michael, suggesting that Sarah might have gone to the nearby bridge with intentions to harm herself. They asked if he had noticed any warning signs of suicidal tendencies or self-harm. Michael revealed that Sarah had struggled with depression after her mother's passing, but had made a full recovery with the help of loved ones and her studies. In fact, Sarah had big plans for her future, aspiring to become a designer and travel the world. To piece together what happened, the police needed to know who Sarah had contact with on the day she vanished, what conversations she had, and who saw her last. The first witnesses to come forward revealed that Sarah had spent most of December 2nd with her childhood friend, Liam McAtasney. As the last person to see her, Liam was a crucial part of the investigation. The police quickly decided to speak with him to gather more information and reconstruct the events of that day. When the police arrived at the McAtasney residence, they met with Liam's mother, who told them that her son was sleeping after a night shift. The officers asked her to wake Liam, who seemed confused about the situation. Once he was informed about Sarah's disappearance, Liam confirmed that they had spent the previous day together and agreed to go to the police station to give a statement. Liam shared that he and Sarah had attended college classes together that morning, but they decided to skip the last 2 lectures and go to her place to unwind instead. At her house, they played video games, chatted about their plans, and socialized. They briefly left her house twice to pick up food and visit a local supermarket. Liam left Sarah's house around 7 p.m. to go to his night shift job and did not see her again. Liam was also asked if Sarah had been struggling with any mental health issues. He explained that she had been battling deep depression since her mother passed away. He shared that Sarah often felt hopeless, wanting to escape or end her life, but he did not think that this meant she was planning to harm herself. He noted that she also struggled to connect with her father, leading to additional emotional strain. Liam considered it possible that Sarah's emotional state may have contributed to her disappearance. However, it was also clear that Sarah was planning a trip to Canada around that time and had recently exchanged money in preparation for her travels. Liam's testimony gained credibility when Canadian dollars were found in her bedside table drawer, though the amount was relatively insignificant. Preston Taylor, a close friend from high school, corroborated Liam's story. Preston mentioned that Sarah had struggled with depression, leading him to wonder if she had fled to Canada or taken her own life by jumping off a bridge. His emotional testimony underscored the strong bond he shared with Sarah. Despite these accounts, investigators soon ruled out the possibility of Sarah fleeing the country due to the absence of her passport. As a result, the search focused on the more distressing possibility of her having jumped to her death. A comprehensive search operation was launched along the river, involving divers, specialized equipment, and hundreds of volunteers, including police. However, strong currents posed a challenge, potentially carrying her remains or personal belongings far from the bridge, and thorough searches of both riverbanks were necessary to try to find any signs of Sarah. Among the volunteers searching for Sarah were her friends Liam and Preston. Despite their efforts, the search yielded nothing, prompting law enforcement to re-question those closest to Sarah. It was during this process that discrepancies in their accounts began to emerge. Sarah's friends and classmates described her as a happy and carefree person, with no signs of depression or problems with her father, whom she often spoke about affectionately. However, Liam and Preston's behavior after Sarah's disappearance raised eyebrows. They initially acted as if they had lost a loved one, gaining sympathy from many. But over time, their behavior seemed increasingly insincere, as if they were performing for an audience. The fact that Liam and Preston had only recently become close, about a month before Sarah's disappearance, raised suspicions and led the police to re-question them. Liam was visibly shaken when he was brought in for further questioning. The investigator asked him about his relationship with Sarah and Preston, and Liam explained that the 3 of them had grown up together on the same street and attended the same school. They were extremely close, sharing their deepest secrets and dreams with each other. Preston had even taken Sarah to prom, but they had never been romantically involved. Liam clarified that his relationship with Sarah was more than just friendship; he considered her like a sister. They had even listed each other as siblings on social media. Sarah had confided in Liam about her family, telling him that her mother had left her a significant amount of money in a safety deposit box at the bank. Sarah didn't trust her father, who claimed a right to the money, so she planned to retrieve it soon and move to Canada. However, when the investigator shared this information with Michael, Sarah's father, he provided a conflicting account. According to Michael, his wife had been saving money for Sarah's future since her birth, setting aside funds for education, a wedding, or a down payment on a house. The money had been stored at home in a shoe box, containing old and worn-out bills, but no one had thought much of it at the time. After Sarah's mother passed away, her father gave her a large sum of money, which he advised her to put in the bank. Sarah took his advice, dividing the money between her checking account for everyday expenses and a safe deposit box for the rest. She intended to use the money for graduate school and travel. Michael claimed he wasn't interested in the money for himself. When investigators discovered that Sarah had access to a significant amount of money, they began to suspect that her disappearance might be related to her finances. They decided to look into her financial transactions, including her bank account and safe deposit box. Their investigation revealed that Sarah had withdrawn a large amount of cash from an ATM just a few days before she disappeared, and had also accessed her safe deposit box at the bank around the same time. The detectives were in for another surprise when they reviewed the bank surveillance footage, which showed that Sarah was not alone when she visited the bank on December 1st. Liam was with her, raising questions about why he hadn't mentioned this earlier. When asked about it, Liam explained that Sarah had confided in him about her banking activities and had asked for his accompaniment because she was nervous about carrying a large sum of cash. Liam's hesitation was evident, but his story seemed plausible, and his demeanor appeared genuine. Further investigation led to the discovery of a security camera in a neighboring house that had captured footage of the street and Sarah's yard. The footage confirmed that Liam had stayed at Sarah's house until 7 p.m., then left for work and didn't return. Meanwhile, the silver sedan was seen leaving the garage around 11 p.m. This new information added a chilling twist to the already disturbing case. In a surprising turn of events, an acquaintance of Sarah's named Anthony walked into the police station about a month after her disappearance. Unaware of the recent events, Anthony had been out of town for several weeks. He shared a peculiar story that sent shockwaves through the investigation. It turned out that Anthony had gone to school with Sarah, Liam, and Preston, and after graduation, he had pursued a passion for filmmaking, keeping in touch only with Liam, who also shared his interest in cinema. Anthony remembered that about a month and a half before Sarah disappeared, Liam visited him and they spent an evening brainstorming ideas for a horror movie aimed at teenagers. Liam came up with a plot about a girl who shares a secret about a large sum of money with her friend, who then gains her trust and kills her, dumping her body in a river. Anthony thought the idea was good, and they even wrote a few pages of the script. After that, Anthony moved on to another project and forgot about the story. He then left town to work on a film as a camera assistant. When he returned, Liam unexpectedly called him and asked if the police had contacted Anthony. Anthony was surprised and had not heard that Sarah was missing, so he decided to go to the police. After hearing a new witness's testimony, the police asked Anthony to try to get Liam to confess by drawing him into a conversation. Anthony agreed and a plan was set in motion. He would invite Liam to work on a project that required renting expensive camera equipment, which they would pretend they couldn't afford. Liam had ambitions of being in a movie, so the police thought he would likely jump at the chance to make his dream a reality, especially if it meant using the money he had taken from Sarah. They decided to test him by setting up a sting operation. Anthony, a friend of Liam's, was asked to pretend to have connections in the film industry and offer him a deal. Anthony met with Liam and suggested they discuss the details in person. Unbeknownst to Liam, a hidden camera had been installed in Anthony's car to capture any incriminating evidence. When Liam got into the car, he looked around nervously, as if he suspected something was off. He then handed Anthony an envelope containing $2,000 in cash and asked if it was enough to rent the equipment they would need for the movie. Anthony agreed, and then asked Liam where he had gotten the old bills. Liam hesitated before admitting that the money belonged to Sarah, and that he and his friend Preston had taken it from her house because, in his words, the dead don't need it. Although Liam didn't provide any further details, his admission was enough for the police to arrest him and his friend Preston on suspicion of a crime. Preston, Liam's accomplice, quickly began cooperating with the authorities and struck a deal with the prosecution. He told them that he hadn't directly participated in the crime, but had helped Liam cover his tracks and get rid of Sarah's body. According to Preston, Liam started plotting to take Sarah's money as soon as he found out about it. Sarah had kept her inheritance a secret, even from her closest friend, for a long time. However, when she began making serious plans for a trip to Canada, Liam asked her how she intended to pay for it, and she revealed that she had inherited a sum of money from her mother. Liam then persuaded her that it would be safer to store the money in a home safe rather than a bank vault, and he urged her to withdraw the cash. Liam, determined to carry out his plan, waited for the perfect opportunity while Sarah's father was away on a business trip. He enlisted the help of his friend Preston, promising him $25,000 in exchange for his assistance. Liam had Sarah withdraw a large sum of money from the ATM, but didn't check the exact amount. They spent the next day together, waiting for the right moment to strike. When the time came, Liam separated Sarah from her dog by locking it in another room, then approached Sarah from behind and attempted to strangle her. However, the crime proved more difficult than Liam anticipated. Sarah, being physically strong and athletic, resisted fiercely, resulting in an intense struggle until she eventually lost consciousness. But despite his best efforts, Liam was unable to determine whether she had truly succumbed. Sarah continued to show signs of life, leaving Liam to prolong his efforts to ensure her demise. This took nearly 30 minutes. Only when Liam was certain Sarah was dead did he leave her house, going about his normal routine by heading to work. He then had Preston follow up on his original instructions, no doubt aiming to ensure their sinister act would go unnoticed. Liam McAtasney snuck into Sarah's house through the back door, avoiding the camera's view, and dragged the body to the garage. He then cleaned up the room to remove any evidence. A couple of hours later, he returned to the house, took a small safe from Sarah's room, and placed the body in the car. Liam drove away carefully to avoid being caught on the neighbor's camera. He met Preston at a bridge, where they transferred the body to Preston's car and then disposed of it in a nearby river. After disposing of the body, they cleaned the car and drove back to Liam's house to divide the stolen money. However, they were disappointed to find only $110,000 in the safe. They decided to be cautious and not spend the old bills immediately to avoid raising suspicion. Preston buried the safe in a local park, and they only spent the money Sarah had withdrawn from her account. During the trial, Preston confessed to the crime, but Liam denied any involvement and tried to shift the blame to his friend. Liam's lawyer also claimed his client was innocent, suggesting that Preston acted alone. The case was complicated by the fact that Sarah's body was never found. When police searched Liam's house, they found a small key that fit the buried safe, which was identified by Preston as evidence of Liam's guilt. The trial of Liam McAtasney lasted over 2 years. Despite the fact that Sarah Stern's body was never found, the evidence presented in court proved McAtasney's guilt. This evidence included a script he had written months before the crime, a key to a safe found in his home, incriminating statements he made in a car, and old bills he had given to someone. Furthermore, fingerprints belonging to Liam and his accomplice, Preston Taylor, were found inside the safe. A co-worker of Liam's also testified that he had been absent from work for a few hours on the night of the crime and had asked someone to cover for him. As a result of the trial, Liam was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Preston, who had not directly participated in the crime, received an 18-year sentence for obstructing justice and hindering the investigation. Preston will be eligible for parole in 15 years. Unfortunately, Sarah Stern's body has still not been found. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Lily James. Lily was born in the coastal town of Sainsbury, New South Wales, Australia in May 2002. She was the first child of the close-knit James family and was especially loved by her maternal grandmother, Barbara. Growing up, Lily spent much of her time by the ocean with her younger brother Max, where she developed a passion for swimming and an active lifestyle. Her father, a water polo coach at an Anglican girls' school in Hustville, encouraged her interest in the sport. Those who knew Lily remembered her as a friendly and outgoing person who excelled in her studies and was always willing to help those in need. Her well-rounded personality made her a standout student, and she was widely respected by her peers. With her impressive talent and dedication, Lily succeeded in multiple areas, including academia, sports, and community service. She was also an accomplished performer, participating in her school's theater and dance club. Eventually, Lily's talents caught the attention of organizers from the prestigious Woodford Folk Festival, one of Australia's largest annual events, attracting over 125,000 attendees from around the world. As part of the celebrations, Lily performed a unique monologue from William Shakespeare's Macbeth. Her performance showcased her impressive skills, charisma, and stage presence, earning her a standing ovation and the jury's approval. She achieved second place in the theater category, a remarkable achievement that earned her recognition and a significant prize. In 2018, Lily achieved another milestone when she passed her beginner's driving test. Her athletic talents also flourished, particularly in water polo, a sport she began competing in professionally, following in her father's footsteps. She won the title of swimming champion in the under-17 category, a feat that delighted her parents. By her final year of school, Lily had decided to pursue a career in sports, and in 2020, she enrolled at Sydney Technological University to study sports business management. A turning point in her life. In early 2021, she started a new chapter. To break up her college routine and gain teaching experience, she took a job as a water polo coach at St. Andrew's Cathedral School. Her youthful energy, vibrant personality, and passion for sports quickly won over her colleagues, the school administration, and the students she was coaching. The students looked up to her and tried to meet her high standards. In return, she sought to understand each student's unique needs and strengths. That's when she met Paul, the new cricket and hockey coach. His impressive skills and charismatic presence quickly made him the center of attention. As a part-time teacher at another school and a member of the University of New South Wales hockey team, Paul was a driven and accomplished young man. He was particularly popular among the female students and staff. However, opinions about him were divided. Some saw him as arrogant and stubborn, while others appreciated his positive qualities. Initially, Lily and Paul's interactions were friendly but brief, limited to exchanging greetings. Over time, their relationship evolved into something more. Lily's friends reported that Paul asked her out on a date, and she found it difficult to say no due to his charming smile. The date had a profound impact on both of them, leading to a decision to meet again. As Lily got to know Paul better, she began to develop feelings for him, unaware of his true nature. Her kindness and openness made her vulnerable to falling in love. Paul appeared to return her affection, frequently complimenting her, giving her flowers, and planning evenings together. They decided to keep their relationship a secret, especially from the students at school. Lily and her boyfriend, Paul, had agreed to keep their relationship private, adhering to the school's policy and Lily's personal preference for discretion. However, as time passed, rumors about their relationship began to circulate, evolving from hushed whispers to open discussions. When Lily discovered that Paul was the one who had revealed their relationship, she felt deeply hurt and betrayed. Paul's portrayal of her had also led to criticism and judgment from others, causing Lily to feel humiliated. As a result, she confronted Paul about his actions and ended their relationship. Despite Paul's subsequent attempts to apologize and reconcile, Lily remained resolute in her decision. She took some comfort in the fact that their relationship had been brief, allowing her to see Paul's true nature before things escalated further. Paul was born in 1999 in the Netherlands to a wealthy and influential family. When his father's job required a relocation to Australia in 2015, Paul and his family made the move. As an only child, Paul received excessive attention and care from his parents, which significantly contributed to his character development. Unfortunately, this upbringing led to Paul growing up with an entitled and self-centered attitude. Paul was a high-achieving student who excelled academically, athletically, and was physically fit. After moving to a new location, he attended St. Andrew's Cathedral School, where he joined the cricket team and quickly gained recognition and respect from his peers for his exceptional skills. He eventually became the team captain and actively participated in organizing extracurricular activities and festivals. While he was well-liked by many, particularly they who found him charming, some of his male peers were put off by his confidence and boasts about his ability to win over any girl. Despite this, Paul's charm and charisma earned him many admirers. After graduating in 2017, the school administration offered him a position as an assistant coach for cricket and hockey, which he gladly accepted. He quickly took on a leadership role and successfully managed these sections, feeling confident in his abilities. However, by early 2018, he surprisingly resigned and returned home with his family, citing unknown reasons for his departure. Back home, Paul decided to further his education and earned a master's degree in sports management. Paul had a conversation with old friends and mentioned that he had improved his coaching skills, which led to a job offer from his former employer. He returned to Australia and started working at the familiar school in early 2020. To reduce living expenses, Paul agreed to share an apartment with a friend in Kensington, a suburb of Sydney. Initially, they enjoyed each other's company, socializing after work. However, a few months later, they had a disagreement, and Paul decided to live alone. His parents, who he couldn't visit due to the pandemic, felt that Paul was lonely despite being busy and surrounded by people. They weren't aware of any romantic relationships in his life. By the summer of 2021, as Paul resumed his regular activities, people began to notice a change in his behavior and personality. He picked up where he left off in the sports world, regaining his status as a key player on the hockey team and continuing his active lifestyle, even featuring in promotional advertisements. At the same time, those who knew him observed emerging characteristics that were not present before. Uncontrollable outbursts of anger became a concern. Furthermore, rumors circulated within the school community about his unusual interest in his female students. He would often engage in flirtatious behavior with teenage girls, staring at them for extended periods, leaving them visibly uncomfortable and embarrassed. Paul's importance in the hockey team's progress to the Australian Hockey League finals was evident despite the turmoil in his personal life. His recent breakup with Lily was likely a significant blow to his ego. Unexpected, on October 26, 2023, at approximately 4:30 a.m., the principal of St. Andrew's Cathedral School in central Sydney sent an email to students and parents announcing the school's closure until the end of the week due to a critical incident. A tragedy occurred at the school, prompting a thorough investigation. On Thursday and Friday, a 24-hour consultation center was established in the school library to support those affected. Forensic teams meticulously searched the school building and surrounding area, gathering evidence. The gym was closed off, and the adjacent shower area was scheduled for demolition due to the disturbing discovery made there. The incident began to unfold when the body of a 20-year-old woman was found in the shower around midnight. She had been seen alive just hours earlier. The water polo coach had entered the shower but never emerged. Surveillance footage revealed that someone had followed her around 8 p.m., but the pursuer left the area alone, heading towards the school exit. A family member was later asked to identify the body due to severe facial damage. The victim was identified as Lily James. As the police delved deeper into the case, surveillance footage played a crucial role, and the prime suspect, a young man, was caught on camera multiple times. Investigations were launched into Paul and Lily's cell phone records, helping police track the suspect's last known location using GPS. They also sought to recover the victim's phone, hoping to uncover evidence through text messages that could shed light on the events leading up to the crime. After successfully locating the devices, the police reconstructed the sequence of events, revealing that Paul had purchased a hammer from a hardware store just days before the crime. It seemed he was consumed by anger toward the victim and had planned a confrontation. On the morning of October 25th, Lily followed her routine, attending the university and then heading to her job in the afternoon. Unbeknownst to her, her ex-boyfriend had other plans. Paul rented a silver Lexus and drove to the school, avoiding the building since he had no classes scheduled. He waited in the car, patiently biding his time. Once the students cleared out, he walked into the gym, concealing a hammer under his jacket to avoid drawing attention. From this vantage point, Paul observed Lily's movements, lying in wait for the perfect moment to strike. When Lily finished her training session and decided to take a shower, Paul saw his chance and followed her. An argument erupted, and in the heat of the moment, Paul attacked Lily, striking her head with the hammer. According to the pathologists, the impact was fatal, and Lily died instantly, without suffering. After waiting for an hour, Paul collected Lily's belongings and left the building. He then drove to Diamond Bay, where he disposed of the weapon in a trash can. Security cameras captured footage of him at the reserve at 8:47 p.m. His last known location, as tracked by investigators, was the Gap, a cliff in the eastern Sydney suburb of Vaucluse. As the community was still reeling from the initial tragedy, another shocking event occurred. On October 27th, at 8 a.m., shopkeepers at Diamond Bay Reserve in Sydney's eastern suburbs made a disturbing discovery. A man's body was found just 11 miles away from the site of the first crime. A rescue team, including a bomb squad and Marine Corps personnel, was formed to retrieve the body. The body was recovered at 3:30 p.m. and taken for identification. Due to severe injuries, fingerprints were used to identify the individual. The victim was 24-year-old Paul, the same person who had been at the scene of the first crime. The investigation team faced a significant challenge in establishing a connection between the fatal incidents and uncovering the circumstances surrounding the events. The Gap is a notorious location with a history of suicides. Around 10 p.m., Paul used Lily's phone to send a message to her father, possibly revealing the location of her body. An hour later, the young man made a brief emergency call, but hung up quickly. When police arrived at the cliff, they found the personal belongings of Lily and Paul, but there was no sign of him. A rented car was parked nearby, suggesting that he may have taken his own life due to feelings of guilt or fear of facing the consequences of his actions. On October 26th, police launched a search operation for his body, using helicopters and boats to scour the coastline. The first day's efforts were unsuccessful, but the next day, a body was found on rocks in a nearby nature reserve. With Paul deceased, the case was closed, and his parents collected his body, opting to cremate it in Sydney. A meeting was subsequently arranged with Tim Watson-Monro, a renowned forensic psychologist with extensive experience in analyzing the behavior of both criminals and victims. Mr. Watson-Monro was asked to share his insights on the incident and analyze the behavior of the perpetrator, Paul. According to Mr. Watson-Monro, Paul's actions were characteristic of individuals with an inflated sense of self-importance who struggle to accept rejection. He believed that Paul committed the crime in a premeditated and calculating manner, showing no remorse for his actions. When asked about Paul's decision to end his own life, Mr. Watson-Monro provided an explanation. Mr. Watson portrays Paul as a self-centered individual with psychopathic traits. Some have compared the tragic events to the finale of Romeo and Juliet, but the story of Lily and Paul is unique and unfolds in a distinct way. A genuine love relationship cannot thrive with pride, dishonesty, and betrayal. Unfortunately, Paul failed to grasp this, leading him to overlook the value of the person beside him. His decision to prioritize his own wounded ego ultimately resulted in the loss of a bright and vibrant life. This not only caused lasting pain for Lily's family but also for Paul's own loved ones. Regrettably, his actions left a devastating impact on those around him. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Katie Sepich. On the morning of August 31, 2003, the lifeless body of 22-year-old Katie Sepich was discovered near a remote landfill in the desert of Las Cruces, New Mexico. She had last been seen by friends as she left a local house party following a night of bar hopping. It would take almost 4 years to identify her killer. Katie, a 22-year-old woman, was described by her mom as outspoken, vivacious, and intelligent. She grew up in Carlsbad, New Mexico, as the oldest of 3 siblings. After graduating with a business degree from New Mexico State University, she was planning to start graduate school in the fall to pursue her MBA. At the time, Katie worked as a waitress at a local Mexican restaurant. Katie was an extremely outgoing individual who formed a close bond with a guy named Joe Bischoff while attending university. Initially, their connection was platonic, but it soon blossomed into romance. Katie confided in her mother, Jeanne, about her deep-seated happiness with Joe and her desire to forge a long-term partnership with him. A short while later, Joe presented her with a diamond engagement ring. After graduating from university in the summer of 2003, Katie and Joe's relationship faced challenges. While Katie opted to pursue further studies at the university, Joe moved back to his parents' place in Gallup, New Mexico, a small city approximately 350 miles away from Las Cruces. Katie was devastated when Joe had to depart. Although their long-distance relationship was extremely challenging, they still found ways to reunite occasionally. During the Labor Day weekend of 2003, Joe visited Las Cruces, and Katie was ecstatic. Sadly, their brief time together took a tragic turn. On Saturday, August 30th, 2003, Katie spent the evening with Joe and their friends, bar hopping before heading to a local house party. However, after the party, Katie vanished. The following day, Katie's mom, Jan, received a life-changing phone call. As a mother, Jane cherished Katie, her remarkable, outgoing, vibrant, and intelligent daughter, who always lit up the room with her infectious laughter. Katie's roommate was on the other end of the line, desperately seeking Jane's help in locating Katie, having already contacted all her friends and local hospitals, but to no avail, with no sign of Katie anywhere. Veronica, who shared a room with Katie, informed Jana that Katie had departed from the party by herself that evening. Although Veronica and Joe had assumed Katie had gone home, they fell asleep at the party venue, only to discover the next morning that she was missing. Katie's family subsequently contacted the police to report her disappearance. Around the same time, a partially clothed female body was found near a desert landfill. Although there was no identification nearby, police officers who responded to the scene determined that the body had been there for less than 24 hours. It was clear to them that the woman's death was not accidental. The victim was estimated to be between 20 and 25 years old, and her partial nudity, from the waist down, suggested that the motive behind the crime was likely sexual. She had defensive wounds on her arms, suggesting she fought back against her attacker and scratched them in the process. The police found skin cells from the assailant under her fingernails, which provided a crucial DNA sample. There were also signs of strangulation on her neck, indicating this was likely the cause of her death. Despite this, there was no evidence of a struggle at the scene where the body was found, leading investigators to believe she died elsewhere. It appeared the killer moved her body to the remote desert landfill in an attempt to delay its discovery. On the victim's body, another shocking discovery was made. Burn marks were found on her arms and back. These marks suggested that the perpetrator attempted to either dispose of the body or destroy evidence, and in doing so, They intentionally set the victim on fire. The police quickly linked Katie's disappearance to the discovery of a young woman's body. Katie's father then went to the mortuary to identify the body. According to Katie's mother, Jeanne, after a few hours of agonizing uncertainty, their worst fears were confirmed. The body was indeed Katie's. The pain was overwhelming, and they were consumed by grief. They felt trapped in a desperate situation with no escape, as if all happiness and hope had been lost, leaving no future ahead. Katie's father was required to identify the body of his beloved daughter. He later recounted to the investigators that when they pulled back the sheet, revealing her bruised and contorted face, he was overcome with emotion, dropped to his knees, and prayed to God to take his own life, overwhelmed by grief. The residents of Las Cruces, once a peaceful place, were left horrified by the traumatic event that befell Katie. With a sense of urgency, the police launched an extensive investigation to apprehend the perpetrator as quickly as possible, largely driven by the fear that this individual might strike again. To better understand Katie's case, the police started by reconstructing the final hours of her life. They sought to establish her whereabouts, her companions, and her activities during that time, as well as whether she had any altercations or enemies. Since the party venue was approximately a mile from Katie's home, the police had to ascertain whether she had managed to return home safely. The investigators' first interviews were with Veronica, Katie's roommate, and Joe, her boyfriend. It struck them as odd that these two had stayed at the party while Katie had departed alone in the middle of the night. Joe displayed a lack of willingness to cooperate with the police, stating that Katie had left the party of her own accord and had intentionally left behind her purse, phone, and keys. The detectives thoroughly examined Katie's route, conducting a door-to-door inquiry and speaking with local residents. But regrettably, no one witnessed or overheard anything unusual. A promising lead indicated that Katie had arrived at her house but failed to enter, as she had departed without her keys. The investigators conducted a thorough search of the house and its surroundings, discovering Katie's shoes outside her bedroom window. It seemed that she had attempted to re-enter the house through the window, but was suddenly attacked. The footprints in the gravel beside the house supported this theory. Katie had put up a fierce fight for her life, but unfortunately, her attacker proved to be stronger. The investigators proposed that after killing Katie, the perpetrator transported her body to the desert landfill and attempted to burn it. They started questioning whether the perpetrator was a stranger or someone Katie knew and trusted. Since around 40 people had attended the party, the investigators looked into the possibility that someone might have trailed Katie when she went home and attacked her, possibly even her boyfriend Joe. When the police questioned Joe again, they told him they were aware that he and Katie had a dispute because she caught him kissing another girl. Joe confirmed this was true and stated that after Katie left, he followed her in his car, but he didn't enter her home because he saw her bedroom light was off and thought she was asleep. So he went back to the party. The investigators stumbled upon another peculiar aspect of Joe's behavior. After leaving the party, he frequently dialed Katie's cell phone, which was still in her purse, and persisted in doing so until morning. The question was whether Joe was attempting to establish an alibi for himself or feigned concern for Katie's well-being. The investigators wanted Joe to explain his suspicious behavior, but he refused to cooperate with them any further. Despite loving Joe deeply, Katie's family was shocked when he failed to attend her funeral, which only fueled their suspicions. In the end, the investigators only needed one thing to clear Joe's name: a DNA sample. Experts discovered DNA samples at 3 different locations on Katie's body, with most of it located under her fingernails. The DNA was identified as human skin cells. Notably, all the DNA samples found on Katie's body came from the same individual. The police were keen to compare Joe's DNA with the DNA recovered from Katie's body, but they faced obstacles in doing so. At the time, Joe was out of town, and his parents had hired a lawyer who informed the investigators that Joe had declined to provide a DNA sample for testing. It was clear to everyone that Joe was hiding something and was likely involved in Katie's death, judging by his behavior. The police were convinced of his guilt, but they needed to find a legal way to obtain his DNA to confirm their suspicions, which took some time. At the same time, investigators were examining alternative explanations. They were researching similar crimes to determine if Katie was the sole victim of whoever ended her life. The DNA samples discovered on her body were compared to a national database, but no matches were found. The investigators went back to the starting point of their inquiry, the party where everything began. They managed to track down all the male guests who had attended the party and requested that each of them provide a DNA sample. Every single one of them complied, since they claimed to have nothing to conceal. Nevertheless, the results of the DNA analysis did not yield any matches with the DNA traces found on Katie's body. This lack of a match led the investigators to refocus their attention on Joe, the solitary individual who had declined to provide his DNA sample. The investigators discovered an alternative approach. Prior to attending the party, Katie and Joe had spent time in her bedroom, where they had been physically intimate. The police subsequently visited the house and collected the sheet from Katie's bed, suspecting they might find Joe's DNA on it. Their hunch proved correct. The laboratory analysis did reveal a sample of male DNA, but it did not correspond to the DNA found on Katie's body. This meant that Joe was not the perpetrator who attacked her. If Joe wasn't involved in what happened to his girlfriend, why did he initially refuse to cooperate with the police? Once the police sent the test results to his lawyer, Joe discovered he had been cleared as a suspect. Following this, Joe changed his mind and decided to talk to the police again, even providing a DNA sample. The new test results confirmed the initial finding. Joe was innocent of the crime. Joe refused to cooperate with the police because he had previously had intimate contact with Katie before the party, and he feared they would discover his DNA on her body. Despite their best efforts, the police and Katie's family couldn't understand Joe's behavior on the night of her death. After Joe was cleared as a suspect, the police had to explore alternative theories. Several partygoers informed the investigators that Katie was wearing rings on her fingers that night, including one given to her by Joe. However, when Katie's body was found, her fingers were bare. The police suspected that the killer had removed the rings. They searched all local pawn shops, but failed to find Katie's stolen jewelry. Near where Katie's body was discovered, another potential lead emerged in the form of tire tracks. Forensic experts successfully identified the brand and model of the tires in question. Upon contacting the manufacturer, the police learned that these specific tires are typically fitted to pickup trucks. Regrettably, this new information failed to bring the authorities any closer to catching the perpetrator, and the case ultimately stalled. About a year after Katie's incident, a similar crime occurred in Wisconsin. In Green Bay, a girl was attacked and suffered the same brutal fate as Katie. She was also set on fire, but miraculously, she managed to survive. The victim credited her survival to feigning death, which led the attackers to leave her. Once they were gone, she put out the flames and sought help at a nearby residence. She claimed to have been attacked by 2 Hispanic males, but the evidence in Katie's case suggested only one perpetrator was involved. To determine if there was a link between the 2 crimes, DNA analysis was necessary. The victim from Wisconsin provided a detailed description of her attackers to the police. When the Green Bay police released the composite sketches, a local farmer recognized the men as his employees, Gregorio Morales and Juan, since one of them had relatives in Las Cruces and often visited them. As a result, both men were arrested, and the police investigating Katie's case believed they had finally identified the culprit. However, the results of the DNA examination proved otherwise. The samples did not match the DNA found on Katie's body. These 2 men were later convicted of assaulting a girl in Green Bay, but they were not connected to the Katie case. Morales was sentenced to 50 years in prison and Gregorio to 50 years. Thus, the investigators reached another dead end. The only evidence the police had were tire tracks from the crime scene and DNA samples of the perpetrator. Katie's family hoped that DNA would allow the police to identify the person who took their daughter's life, but there were problems with that. It was not legal to take a DNA sample from anyone arrested by the police. Jeanne, Katie's mom, expressed her surprise and frustration about this. They had lost their daughter to a monster, and they needed justice, to know who had done this and why. And most of all, they needed to know that he would be stopped from doing this again. The detective leading Katie's case informed Jeanne that the only evidence they possessed was DNA. During her fierce struggle to survive, Katie had managed to collect her killer's blood and skin underneath her fingernails. The police had successfully extracted a DNA profile from this evidence and uploaded it into CODIS, a national forensic database. Detective Jones clarified that every week, this DNA evidence would be automatically cross-checked against the offender database to search for a potential match. This news brought renewed hope to Katie's family, as they were confident that they would eventually identify their daughter's killer once a matching profile was found. Detective Jeanne casually mentioned that the perpetrator was such a menace he'd likely be arrested again soon, at which point his DNA would be collected and entered into the system, leading to his identification and eventual conviction. However, Detective Jones contradicted him, explaining that this process isn't possible in New Mexico or most other states, as it's against the law to collect DNA samples from someone simply because they've been arrested. 3.5 years after Katie's death, a significant breakthrough occurred in the case on December 18, 2006. A DNA sample was discovered that matched the DNA evidence found on Katie's body. The attacker was identified as 26-year-old Gabriel Avila, a married father of one who had no prior connection to Katie. Notably, Avila had a lengthy criminal history and had been released from prison just shortly before Katie's murder on November 13, 2003. Less than 3 months after killing Katie, Avila was caught and arrested for breaking into an apartment shared by 2 young women carrying a knife. Fortunately, the college roommates managed to avoid an attack by locking themselves in the bathroom and quickly calling the police. In March 2004, Avila was found guilty of aggravated burglary with the intention of committing aggravated assault. However, after being released on bail, Avila fled instead of facing justice. Avila could have been caught and arrested just 3 months after Katie's attack, but due to flaws in the system, it took 3.5 years to establish a connection between him and Katie's death. Avila evaded police for almost a year before being caught in November 2004, thanks to a tip. He received a 9-year prison sentence, and a DNA sample was taken when he entered prison, but it sat untested for another 2 years. When the results finally came back, showing a partial match to DNA from Katie's crime scene, investigators sprang into action, tracking down the truck Avila used to dispose of her body, where they found a ring that belonged to Katie. This case highlights the need for system change. The police wasted resources and time searching for the perpetrator for 3 years, which could have been avoided if they had taken a DNA sample from Avila during his initial arrest. Moreover, it is astonishing that his DNA sample was only tested 2 years later, in 2006. Detectives investigating Katie's case visited Avila in prison after finding her ring in his pickup truck. Avila confessed to the crime, explaining that he had been in the area that night to buy illegal substances while his wife was away. He claimed that he offered Katie a ride when he saw her, but she declined. Later, he saw her again outside her house and stopped to offer help when she said she couldn't get in because she didn't have her purse. Katie tried to climb into her bedroom window, but Avila attacked and undressed her. Unsure what to do next, Avila strangled Katie, fearing she would identify him later. He then put her body in his pickup truck and drove to a desert landfill, where he dumped her body and attempted to set it on fire to destroy evidence, but his plan failed. Avila's DNA sample was recollected, and it matched DNA evidence found on Katie's body from 2003. Her parents were hopeful this new finding would lead to a swift investigation. However, they were shocked to discover that, in New Mexico and nearly every other state, it was illegal to collect DNA samples from individuals upon arrest. Instead, DNA was only entered into the system after someone had been convicted and sentenced to prison. This discovery prompted Katie's parents to launch a nationwide campaign, seeking to pass a law in all 50 states requiring individuals arrested for violent crimes to provide a DNA sample. The DNA would then be added to the CODIS national database, facilitating investigations and potentially solving crimes. In 2006, Katie's law was passed by the New Mexico state legislature with a near-unanimous vote of only 5 dissenting voices, and was subsequently signed into law in March 2006. Following the relentless advocacy of Katie's parents, the legislation was eventually adopted at the federal level in 2010. To date, over 31 states have enacted laws similar to New Mexico's Katie's Law. Katie's father, David, had long feared that another person would suffer the same fate as his daughter at the hands of her killer. But with the law now in place, he can finally find some comfort and relief. Opponents of this policy argue it invades privacy and violates civil rights, while others note that DNA, unlike fingerprints, contains sensitive genetic information. In the case of United States versus Kincaid, a federal district court ruled that collecting DNA samples before conviction and including them in the national DNA database does not violate constitutional rights. In 2017, Gabriel Avila's trial got underway. During the proceedings, Avila offered a heartfelt apology to Katie's family. His lawyer pleaded with the judge to show mercy, citing Avila's remorsefulness as a mitigating factor. District Attorney Susana Martinez countered that Avila had delayed his confession for over 3 years, only coming forward when confronted with irrefutable DNA evidence by detectives. At the sentencing hearing, Katie's father, David, addressed the judge, imploring him not to be lenient with the punishment. He argued that his family would never have the opportunity to see Katie again, and it was only fair that the person responsible for her death should not be allowed to experience freedom again in their own lifetime. In May 2007, Gabriel Avila was found guilty and received a 69-year prison sentence. He will be eligible for parole in 2043 after serving 30 years of his sentence. Jenna believes that true closure is unattainable, but she is now ready to move forward. She, her husband, and their 2 other children have been healing and progressing with their lives, and they cherish their remaining kids deeply. Additionally, Jenny has pledged that she and her husband will persist in their efforts to have Katie's Law enacted in all 50 states as a testament to their deceased daughter. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Kelly Cochran. Christopher Reagan was born in Detroit, Michigan, where he spent his formative years and received his education. At the age of 20, he made the decision to join the military, driven by a desire to defend his country. Christopher discovered his true calling and committed himself wholeheartedly to serving his nation with honor and unwavering dedication. As a guardian of the citizens' peace, this decision influenced the course of his life. Christopher was sent to a military base near the town of Marquette. There, on the military base not far from Marquette, fate brought Christopher together with Terry, a young teacher from the town of Iron River. Recalling their acquaintance, Terry told the detective how, being young, they would see each other, and a mutual attraction arose at first sight. The young people often met on the streets of the city and felt too shy to greet each other, but over time, they began to walk together. Their communication became more and more frequent and intimate, and eventually it grew into a close friendship. For several years, they remained only close friends because Christopher's military service did not allow him to pursue a serious relationship. At some point, Chris decided to leave the military service and move to Traverse City, a city located in the same state but far from the place where his beloved lived. However, the distance did not become a barrier to their feelings. On the contrary, communication between them became even closer. In December 2012, Christopher proposed to Terry to start a long-distance romantic relationship. Both were single at that moment, knew each other for many years, and always maintained a proper relationship. After a short period, the lovers recognized that they shared numerous common interests: a deep appreciation for nature, a preference for a balanced lifestyle, and a yearning for serenity. This is why Iron River proved to be the ideal location for both of them. The couple reached the decision to cohabitate. Christopher relocated to live with Terry, secured employment at a factory manufacturing components for naval vessels, and before long, had subordinates reporting to him. Life was unfolding in the most favorable manner possible. However, after 2 years of living together, problems began in the relationship between Christopher and Terry, and the passion gradually faded. As they did not try to overcome the difficulties of this difficult period, it became obvious that they would not be able to keep their connection. Eventually, they made the difficult decision to part ways. The parting was peaceful, and the former lovers managed to maintain friendly relations. After breaking up with Terry, Christopher could no longer continue his life in her house, so he decided to rent his own place. As time went on, it dawned on him that he wanted to change where he lived as well. Chris began looking for a more dynamic and vibrant city. He responded to job openings in various locations by sending out his resume. In October 2014, fate presented Christopher with the opportunity to start a new chapter in Asheville, North Carolina. Here, he found not only a job but also a cozy place with many picturesque natural attractions. In this new city, Chris was about to begin his life anew. On October 14th, Christopher wrote Terry that he had taken the day off and would be free the next day. The reason was a doctor's appointment, after which he suggested they meet up and go for a walk as they had often done when they still lived together. However, on October 15th, he did not contact his girlfriend. Terry was deeply concerned. She had tried reaching him for several days, and worried, she contacted their shared acquaintances, but they had no information. 10 days later, a distressed Terry filed a missing person report about Christopher's disappearance. The report was registered, but the police swiftly reassured Terry, stating that people occasionally vanish for a time before returning, sometimes even settling in other locations. At the police station, Terry also mentioned that Christopher had recently been offered a job in North Carolina, implying he may have made it to his new residence and chosen to start afresh, cutting ties with the past. To avoid making idle speculations, investigators launched a detailed investigation. They managed to identify the company where Christopher had recently started working and contacted one of the employees to find out what he knew about Christopher. However, surprisingly, no information could be obtained, as Christopher had not shown up for work for 10 days. The police speculated that he might have been the victim of an accident, given his frequent solitary trips outdoors. Search teams ventured into the local woods, trying to check everything on the paths Christopher liked to explore. Specially trained dogs were deployed to assist in the search, but unfortunately, no trace of the missing man was ever found. Terry then suggested a visit to Christopher's former apartment in order to make sure that no accident had happened to him, and perhaps traces could be found there that would indicate his current whereabouts. Agreeing to Terry's suggestion, the investigators went to the home of the missing Christopher. Upon entering the apartment, the detectives were struck by the chaos inside. Items were strewn across the floor, and closets were left open. Their first thought was that Christopher was probably just a sloppy person and had forgotten to clean up. Terry, however, immediately refuted this idea, claiming that her ex-boyfriend was not that sloppy. The detectives began to suspect that the case might be connected to a crime. After inspecting Christopher's home, they decided to start a larger-scale search for him. The police carefully searched the neighborhood and eventually found Reagan's car outside the city limits, about 8 miles from Iron River. It seemed unlikely that he had left his car there intentionally, so they had to break into one of the doors to access the vehicle. The interior contained only ordinary items such as a hat, coat, and gloves, but one of the policemen noticed a small piece of yellow paper on the front passenger seat with a detailed route written on it, though no specific address was provided. The authorities decided to follow the route indicated in the note. Terry explained that despite living in Iron River, Christopher still hadn't learned the names of streets and roads, so he wrote down directions like turning at a bus stop or driving past a gas station. Terry shared that judging from the detailed notes, this was the first time Christopher was headed to this location. The group of detectives followed the route indicated on the piece of paper, which took them to a neighboring town, stopping in front of the house noted in Christopher's notes. The investigators knocked on the door, needing to find out who lived there and why Christopher had traveled that way. The door was opened by Jason Cochran, an overweight man who was surprised to see uniformed men in front of his house. His wife Kelly soon appeared. The officers informed the couple that they were investigating the disappearance of Christopher Reen, and a piece of paper found in his abandoned car pointed to this address. Kelly candidly revealed that she worked with Christopher at the same plant, and they got along well and were even friends. She had not been in contact with him in recent weeks, but in mid-October, she tried to contact Chris via text messages, but received no response and assumed he had gone to North Carolina for a new job. Kelly also mentioned that Christopher had been having health issues and may have just decided to start a new life. The investigators found themselves in a quandary. They did not understand why the route that led to the Cochran home was written down on a piece of paper found in the missing man's car. Despite the lack of answers, the couple expressed their willingness to cooperate with the investigation. After a brief questioning, without getting the information they needed, the detectives left their home. The next phase of the investigation involved interviewing Christopher's co-workers. The detectives visited the factory, where they spoke with employees and supervisors. One of the supervisors revealed that Christopher was having an affair with Kelly Cochran, and rumors about this had been circulating for months. This new information piqued the investigators' interest, and they decided to re-interview the Cochran couple to clarify the nature of their relationship. Ultimately, Kelly admitted that she and Christopher had indeed been involved in an affair, but she was unable to disclose this previously due to her husband's presence. She explained that she and her husband Jason have an open relationship, and Jason is generally accepting of his wife's affairs. However, the topic was sensitive, and it may have hurt his feelings. Christopher's co-workers disputed Kelly's claims, stating that Jason was strongly opposed to the affair, and there was no casual relationship in the Cochran family as Kelly had suggested. Jason himself had a conversation with the police that revealed he was vehemently against his spouse's unfaithfulness, though this stance made him a suspect. However, the lack of decisive evidence made it impossible to determine that he was involved in Christopher's disappearance, and the officers had no choice but to release Kelly and Jason from the police station. The investigation dragged on for 5 long months, and the mysterious case remained unsolved. On March 5, 2015, the case was placed in the hands of a new investigator, Jeremy Ogden, who immediately began actively working on it. Ogden's initial task was to thoroughly analyze the Cochran family's history. He learned that Kelly had met Jason while still in high school, and they began living together immediately after graduation. The two had very different personalities. Kelly was socially adept and loved to talk, while Jason was known for his reticence and taciturnity, only answering questions when asked. Despite these differences, the couple decided to get married and started their own company providing swimming pool maintenance services. The business was modest but brought them a decent income, with most of the work taken on by Jason. The constant stress and strain took a toll on his health, and he began to have back problems, feeling heavier and heavier every day. Eventually, he realized he was unable to continue the business, and Kelly took over all the work of running it. During this challenging time, Kelly sought ways to help her husband recover, and she discovered a plant that offered hope for Jason's recovery. However, the use of this plant in medical practice had just begun, and it was prohibited in the state where they resided. The only option for Kelly and Jason to obtain the drug was to relocate, and they decided to move to Iron River Township, Michigan in 2014. Here, Jason was able to consult a doctor and receive a prescription for the remarkable plant, ultimately finding relief from his suffering. In early 2014, the couple found employment at a plant that specialized in manufacturing parts for U.S. warships, where they worked alongside Christopher. Kelly made every effort to ensure her family's financial well-being, and she and Christopher became close friends, which was particularly important for Christopher, who had been having difficulties in his relationship with Terry. The investigation continued, and after reviewing the evidence, the prosecutor made a strong case for a search warrant of the Cochrans' home. The search uncovered a disturbing book by Jason describing murder scenes, one matching Christopher's characteristics. Suspicions about Jason grew, leading to another search, but the home was empty when police arrived. No one opened the door, and it turned out that immediately after the initial search, Kelly and Jason had left town and moved to another state, Indiana. Their quick getaway had investigators worried, as they feared they might not be able to find the crucial evidence they had been hunting for months. It was especially important to collect DNA samples from the suspects. That's when Michigan police officers contacted their Indiana counterparts, asking them to take DNA samples. The Indiana police officers headed to the Cochrans' new home, and the couple did not object at all to the procedure, as there was no legitimate reason to charge them with murder, nor was there any evidence of the victim's body itself. The investigation was gradually losing steam, leaving less and less chance of solving the disappearance of Christopher. Time passed, and suddenly, on February 22, 2016, a call rang out at the police station in Hobart, Indiana. On the other end of the line was a worried Kelly Cochran. She tried to explain that her husband, Jason, was not breathing, but in her state of panic and emotional shock, it was difficult to provide specific details. Rescuers arrived to find Kelly in a panicked state, obstructing doctors. Jason was discovered dead, his face suggesting extreme overheating. Investigators uncovered a syringe at the home, but the forensic report revealed Jason's death was by strangulation, not drug abuse. This led to a re-examination of the evidence, with Kelly becoming the prime suspect in both her husband's murder and the disappearance of Christopher Reen. On February 23, 2016, Kelly Cochran was invited to the police station to testify in Jason's murder case. During the interrogation, the investigators asked her directly about her involvement in her husband's death and whether she had administered excessive doses of illegal drugs to him. Despite the lack of concrete evidence and pressure from the investigators, the young woman did not confess to either the murder of her husband or the kidnapping of Christopher. Several months later, investigators have not been able to find convincing evidence of Kelly's guilt, as well as the grounds for a possible arrest. During the investigation, Detective Jeremy Ogden met Walter Hammerman, a close friend of Jason's. After learning about the tragic incident from Kelly herself, Walter quickly went to the police. He emphasized that illegal drugs could not have caused Jason's death, as he knew his friend well, and Jason would have told him about any changes in his life. Additionally, Jason had been using only medicinal herbs to alleviate the persistent back pain he had been experiencing for a long time. However, Walter noticed that his friend had been going through a difficult situation lately. In March last year, Jason shared his concerns with him, stating that he and Kelly had to travel to Indiana due to suspicions from the Iron River police regarding their involvement in the disappearance of a man. Everything that had occurred had significantly affected Jason. He had even become depressed and attempted to take his own life, which necessitated intensive treatment. Walter also observed a noticeable change in his friend's conduct. Kelly started to exert more and more control over his life, and it seemed that Jason was continuously on edge, whereas previously, the boys could spend hours playing video games together. Jason now began to avoid social gatherings as soon as his wife returned from work. This information became a crucial piece in the investigation and enabled the investigators to comprehend the dynamics within the Cochran family. After the medical examiner determined that Jason had died from strangulation, Detective Ogden began to devise a cunning plan to force Kelly to tell the truth about the fate of Christopher Reen. It was decided to use Walter, Jason's close friend, as bait to lure Kelly into a trap and force her to make a mistake. While Walter accepted a difficult role, he was to become a tool in the hands of the investigation and play out a performance in front of Kelly Cochran. On March 12, 2016, he called Kelly while under the watchful eye of police officers equipped with a listening device. He was to give Kelly a fictitious letter from Jason that supposedly contained something important. Walter also told Kelly that her husband had given the letter to her shortly before his death, with the condition that he not open the envelope and immediately send it to the police if anything happened to him. Suddenly, Kelly asked Walter to drop the idea, which came as a real shock to both Walter and the police officers who had been monitoring the situation. Despite this revelation, detectives still had no direct evidence. In the weeks that followed, Kelly was subjected to numerous interrogations by investigators in an attempt to get the truth out of her, but she continued to deny her guilt. On April 26, 2016, it suddenly became clear that Kelly Cochran had managed to slip away from the scrutiny of investigators, mocking the justice system. Detectives immediately joined forces with police officers from Iron River and Hobart, announcing a federal manhunt for Kelly Cochran. Walter Hammerman, who cooperated with the police, was shocked and frightened. He feared that the perpetrator would never be found and that she could once again get away with it and might later attempt to attack him. Kelly's phone was off, as if she was enjoying a game of cat and mouse with the cops. After 2 hectic days filled with unease and upheaval, Detective Jeremy Ogden managed to uncover the information that Kelly Cochran was located off the west coast of the United States. She had skillfully evaded the police and traveled to Kentucky, specifically to the town of Wingo, which is situated more than 6 hours away from Hobart. A detective notified the local law enforcement, advising that upon locating Kelly, they should apprehend her, exercising utmost caution due to her potential threat. On April 28th, police officers located Kelly at her cousin's home. The arrest team, responding quickly to the information, proceeded to the house, knowing that Kelly could be dangerous and prone to escape attempts. They acted quickly and without warning, and that afternoon, Kelly was apprehended and taken into custody. Detective Ogden arrived in Wingo, where he continued interviewing the suspect, along with investigators from Indiana and Michigan. After speaking with Kelly Cochran, the details became clear. The story of her relationship with Christopher Reen was much more complex and significant than everyone had initially believed. She genuinely loved him, and Kelly longed to escape this city and build a new life with him. However, everything changed on October 13, 2015, when Jason discovered her infidelity. They were fighting, and Jason remembered the pact the newlyweds made on their wedding night. According to that pact, the cheater was obligated to kill his lover if his cheating became known to his other half. Kelly claimed that she had never taken that agreement seriously. She thought it was a joke, but Jason was serious and warned her that he would do it himself if she didn't keep her vow. Kelly didn't want to take that responsibility, but she helped Jason commit this horrible crime. On the evening of October 14, 2015, Christopher Reen arrived at the home of his mistress, Kelly Cochran. It was a moment he wanted to enjoy, as their encounter was while Kelly's husband was away. The young woman offered him dinner, then a pleasant time and intimacy. Everything was going according to plan, and their evening promised to be special. But their solitude was interrupted by Jason's sudden appearance. He burst into the bedroom with a rifle in his hands. Panicked and terrified, Christopher realized he was in a death trap. Jason, without hesitation, took aim and fired a shot at Christopher's head. The bullet mortally wounded him, and Chris died on the spot. Afterward, under Jason's direction, the accomplices dragged the body into the basement and began dismembering it using a hacksaw. Christopher's limbs and head were detached from the torso, and the remains were placed in several trash bags and then disposed of by dumping them in the woods near the village of Crystal Falls. They drove Christopher's car away from the house to ward off suspicion. The couple thoroughly cleaned the house to remove evidence of the crime. The couple were accomplices to a terrible crime. Kelly Cochran also did not hide her participation in the tragic death of her husband. According to her, the idea of revenge was born when Jason, having discovered that Kelly had a lover, decided to commit the crime. Kelly, in turn, wanted to get back at him for the loss of happiness with the man she loved. She confessed that she was deeply in love with Christopher and felt that her spouse deprived her of the opportunity to be happy. She never could come to terms with the loss and the pain she felt on a daily basis. Kelly hated her husband for what he had forced her to do and realized she couldn't continue to live peacefully with it. The opportunity for a crime came on February 26, 2016, when Jason complained of back pain. Kelly talked him into giving him a shot with a medication. The dose of the medication was too high, but for some reason, it didn't work properly. Seeing that her husband was still breathing, Kelly suffocated Jason by covering his mouth and nose with her hands. Later, just in case, Kelly squeezed his neck to make sure her husband was already dead. This explained the appearance of bruises on the victim's body. After Kelly Cochran's testimony, she actively cooperated with the police to help determine where Christopher's remains were buried. On May 18, 2016, Detective Jeremy Ogden, along with a team of investigators and a canine team, went to a site near the village of Crystal Falls. This seldom visited neighborhood had become the hiding place of a terrible mystery. The team of investigators began a thorough sweep of the woods around the lake, each member carefully penetrating between the trees. One of the canine dogs suddenly detected a faint odor and led the officers forward. All the other officers followed the dog tensely, expecting the reveal to be close. The dog led the group to an unassuming hill, littered with fallen leaves and branches. Clearing it, the investigators found objects, one of which was unmistakably a human skull. Upon closer examination, it was obvious that the victim had been murdered. The bullet hole spoke for itself. Investigators had no doubt that they had discovered Christopher's severed head. Also found at the scene was a .22 caliber bullet, a broken gun, and glasses that probably belonged to Reagan. Dental records were used to identify the victim's remains. The missing person case that had plagued investigators for 2 years was finally solved. In April 2016, Kelly Cochran was formally charged with the murders of Christopher Reen and Jason Cochran. On February 13, 2017, the 34-year-old criminal was arraigned in Michigan State Court. The prosecutor emphasized that Kelly significantly diminishes her role by being the mastermind behind both crimes. He argued that Christopher viewed his relationship with Kelly as an occasional encounter, while she genuinely loved him and planned a future with him. Christopher's refusal to have a serious relationship with her led to rage, and Kelly decided to kill him by making up a story about a pact with her husband. The prosecution had strong evidence, including Kelly's confession in court. However, she presented a different version, according to which she was being abused by her jealous husband, who arranged the crime. He hid in the basement that day, caught the lovers off guard, and then grabbed a gun in a rage and shot Christopher. The idea of dismembering the body was Jason's suggestion, and he coerced Kelly into helping by threatening to kill him. The new version made the jury wonder about Kelly's guilt. They deliberated for 3 hours and still reached their verdict. Kelly was found guilty of the premeditated murder of Christopher Reen. She was given a life sentence without parole. Jason Cochran's case did not go to trial as a plea agreement was reached, and Kelly was sentenced to 65 years in prison. From the courtroom, Kelly Cochran was sent straight to Crown Point Correctional Facility in Ypsilanti, Michigan, where she is serving her sentence. Within the prison walls, Kelly continues to reveal details of her crimes. She claims that she and Jason committed more crimes, and Christopher is just one of their many victims. However, the details, names, and additional crimes that Kelly does not disclose make it difficult to corroborate her words. Kelly's brother has also heard from her that there were more victims, but there is no concrete evidence to back that up at this time. Detective Jeremy Ogden of the Hobart, Indiana Police Department is scrutinizing the details, hoping to uncover some clues and find evidence of other possible crimes committed by Kelly and Jason Cochran, in the hope that this additional evidence will help close a chapter in this dark story. The state of Delaware was left reeling by these events. Madison Sparrow headed out to meet her friends for ice cream on October 2, 2020, but she never returned home. Her mother immediately alerted the police. Thanks to the swift actions of the officers, disturbing details began to emerge. Madison Elizabeth Sparrow was born on September 12, 2003, in Norfolk, Virginia, USA. She was the daughter of Heather Sparrow Murphy and Richard Prestige, and had two sisters, Molly and Wendelin. Although not much is known about her family, we do know Wendelin was born in 1999 in Durango, Colorado, from Richard's previous relationship. Over time, they settled in Newark, Newcastle County, Delaware, the setting for this story. Madison's younger sister, Molly, was born on October 5, 2010. She quickly became Madison's best friend. With a deep affection for children, Madison was the eldest among 8 cousins who all cherished her dearly. She never missed a chance to play with them or put on enchanting performances that everyone found delightful. Her laughter was truly infectious. She had a cheerful spirit that could light up any room. Yet there were moments when Madison would become pensive and dreamy. Her father shared that even from a young age, she showed wisdom beyond her years. She observed and reflected carefully before reacting. Madison's affectionate nature extended to her hugs. They could lift anyone's spirits instantly. Both friends and family saw her as deeply loyal and always considerate about their well-being. Madison's curiosity stayed with her throughout her childhood. She loved learning and experimenting, which led her to join the Girl Scouts, a global youth organization for girls. By the fall of 2012, existing Girl Scout troops were fully occupied, so her mom stepped up as their first troop leader. Madison, at the age of 9, entered the Brownies section, tailored for girls aged 7 to 10. Over the years, Madison distinguished herself as a cookie seller and earned several badges marking her exceptional performance in various duties. Throughout almost 10 in the Girl Scouts organization, she developed strong friendships. Later, driven by a desire to work with other young people and create a positive impact, she volunteered to assist in her sister Molly's troop. Madison was warm-hearted and committed to serving God and her country. She always lent a helping hand while adhering to the principles of the Girl Scouts. Like any young girl, she delighted in having fun. Even during her teenage years, she was known as the Queen of Pranks and loved planning parties with friends. Whether it was movie nights or makeovers that included manicures and pedicures, she could stay up all night but often struggled to wake up before 2 p.m. the next day. Before finishing elementary school, Madison met another central figure in this story, Anuka Stalinsky. Anuka was born in Newark on July 9, 2003. The two quickly became close friends and studied for exams together. Information about Anuka is limited, but we know her parents were Robert Stalinsky and Robin Carz. As of 2004, they lived on Arona Mink Drive in Newark. Madison and Anuka moved on to middle school together after completing elementary school. There they made new friends, including Noah Sharp, a fellow Newark native born on August 23, 2001. Details about Noah's background are limited too. However, it's known his mother Nikki Sharp had 2 other children, David and Brianna. The trio, Madison, Anuka, and Noah, would often go out together for ice cream or take long walks through the city's green spaces. When Noah and Madison crossed paths, mutual attraction sparked between them, and within a few months, a teenage romance blossomed. Initially, they were head over heels in love. However, in early 2020, after being together for just over a year, Madison decided to end the relationship without giving any apparent reasons. They parted ways amicably and agreed to remain friends. Nonetheless, Noah was heartbroken as he still deeply loved her. During this period, Anuka became a trusted confidant for Noah. They started seeing each other more frequently and texting almost every day. Although Noah's heart was still broken, with time he began dating Anuka. Despite his new relationship with Anuka, Noah did not lose contact with Madison. On her 17th birthday on September 12, 2020, he even visited her and brought a gift. That day, Madison's mother noticed that Noah was still upset about the breakup. When Anuka learned about this meeting, she became consumed with jealousy. She couldn't accept that her beloved continued to be friends with his ex-girlfriend. Likewise, Noah's resentment turned into anger. He wanted Madison to feel the same pain he was enduring. The following week, blinded by hatred and jealousy, Anuka and Noah began planning how to end Madison's life. Through text messages, FaceTime calls, and in-person meetings, they exchanged chilling ideas about possible weapons and methods for disposing of the body once the crime was committed. The messages they sent each other indicated their intention to make Madison suffer. Anuka suggested several options, including using a knife to inflict a fatal wound to the heart. They also discussed using a shotgun or perhaps a baseball bat. However, according to official documents, they quickly dismissed the idea of using a shotgun since it would produce too much noise. Although Noah wasn't very confident initially, they eventually decided on using a blunt object during these discussions. They also performed calculations to determine how many bricks would be necessary to prevent Madison's body from floating if they decided to dispose of her in the water. When doubts arose, they mentioned that another option was to bury her since Noah could dig a hole and knew where to find shovels. In the end, they devised what they believed to be the perfect plan. Madison loved ice cream almost as much as she loved Halloween. Her cheerful spirit eagerly awaited October every year to celebrate her favorite holiday. Anuka knew Madison's taste well and took advantage of this. On Friday, October 2nd, 2020, she called Madison and invited her out for ice cream and to spend the day together. Madison immediately agreed because she hadn't spoken to her friend for a long time and wanted to buy a gift for Molly, whose birthday was in 3 days. On that day, Madison wore black tights, denim shorts, gray boots, and a blue sweatshirt with the inscription New Jersey. She finished her look with white ghost-shaped earrings. Normally, she didn't wear much jewelry, especially earrings, but with Halloween approaching, she decided these ghost earrings would be perfect. At 2:44 p.m., she said goodbye to Heather, saying she would see her later, and left. Although there were no actual ghosts in this story, what happened next was far scarier. It was the last time her mother saw her alive. The following hours, days, weeks, and years turned into a true nightmare for the Sparrow family, her friends, and the residents of Newark. Several hours later, Heather began receiving insulting text messages from Madison's phone number, alongside messages implying that Madison had left the country. Heather initially thought it was a joke and even replied wishing her daughter luck in her endeavors, while joking that she had forgotten her passport in the safe. However, no response came back, even when Heather called Madison's phone. Heather became increasingly concerned when there was still no answer, while she was out with Molly, taking her to scout meetings and swimming lessons. The lack of response began to seriously worry her. Heather decided to call Annika, aware that they were supposed to meet later in the day. Upon answering, Annika burst into tears, explaining that Madison had insulted her and that she dropped her off near a store. Anuka then suggested contacting Noah, but he wasn't responding either. Frustrated, Heather asked Annika to continue trying to reach him. The three of them, however, no new information surfaced. Disheartened, Heather opted to return home. On her way back, she received several messages from her daughter's friends who had also received unusual SMS messages and were keen to understand what was happening. Once she arrived home and searched for any clues, Heather found nothing that indicated her daughter had run away. Even the money given to her for her birthday, her clothes and her credit card were still in her room. These strange messages made little sense. Madison had no reason to run away, especially without taking essential items like a bag with clothes and money. At approximately 8:30 p.m., when Madison failed to come home, Heather contacted 911 and reported her daughter missing. Despite continuous efforts to connect with people, all attempts were fruitless. Upon learning of the situation, Heather's parents traveled from another city to support their daughter. She also notified Madison's father, residing in Colorado, who promptly shared information on social media appealing for assistance in locating his daughter. On the next day, Saturday, October 3, 2020, the Delaware State Police issued a golden alert for 17-year-old Madison. This alert triggers all required procedures for searching for a missing person within Delaware. Over 2 days, police search teams, family members, and numerous friends scoured the farmlands near the University of Delaware, where Madison was last seen alive. The media also spread information about the search, urging people to provide any details they might have related to Madison's whereabouts. Delaware State Police simultaneously started questioning Madison's friends, and all evidence pointed to her ex-boyfriend. According to some sources, the girl headed to a wooded area in Newark behind an elementary school, where she was also seen with Noah on the day she disappeared. Detectives detained and interrogated the young man for almost 9 hours from October 4th through 5th, presenting several conflicting scenarios and insisting he didn't know what had happened. Eventually, the barrier of silence broke, shocking everyone. The young man confessed not only to taking Madison's life, but also claimed that Annika was his accomplice. Noah informed police that Annika hated Madison because she was jealous of her relationship with him. He also elaborated on how deeply he had been hurt by his breakup with Madison. Noah recounted driving Madison to the wooded area behind the elementary school. As they walked along a trail, he hid behind bushes with an aluminum baseball bat in hand. He told officers how Madison was happy to spend time with her friend and unsuspecting of the danger ahead. Suddenly emerging from hiding, Noah struck her on the head twice with great force. He admitted that he put all his strength into the second blow and said that it was at that moment he snapped after months of uncontrollable anger towards her for breaking his heart. Unable to contain himself, he continued delivering more blows to her body. Following the assault on Madison, Noah and Annika transported her body using Anna's car to a site beneath a bridge near the intersection of I-95 and a Delaware state road, approximately 15 minutes away from the crime scene and close to a warehouse. Upon reaching this location, they tried to submerge her body in the river, but failed. Instead, they opted to conceal it in a shallow grave they dug at the same spot. Using details provided by Noah, investigators meticulously searched the designated area. There, they unearthed an aluminum baseball bat used as a weapon bearing traces of blood. The crime scene yielded clothing worn by Madison when she left home, with some articles showing evidence of scorching. Subsequently, they guided law enforcement to a wooded area near the junction of I-95 and Delaware State Road. It was here that he and his accomplice had clandestinely interred the body on Monday, October 5, 2020. Corporal Heather Piper announced the finding of the body, leaving Madison's family, friends, and the entire community in disbelief. A few days later, on Friday, October 9th, hundreds of individuals gathered at the high school football field to honor and remember the victim. The autopsy revealed that Madison's death resulted from blunt force trauma to the head. Experts also found Noah's and Anna's DNA in physical evidence collected both at the crime scene and where the body was discovered. Noah faced charges of first-degree murder, possession of a deadly weapon during the commission of a crime, and first-degree conspiracy. He was placed in a correctional facility with bail set at $1 million. On Monday, November 16, 2020, over a month after the tragic event, and following the processing of necessary evidence, 17-year-old Anna was also arrested. Her arrest occurred after a grand jury in Newcastle County indicted her on charges of first-degree murder, possession of a deadly weapon during the commission of a felony, and first-degree conspiracy. Meanwhile, Madison's family was in disarray. Heather repeatedly stated that a rational reason for why her daughter's life was taken would never be found. Her main plea for justice was that these criminals would never again be able to harm others or themselves. Although Noah admitted to detectives that he committed the crime during an official court indictment, he did not plead guilty. This led to speculation that his defense might argue mental instability, a common tactic lawyers sometimes use to justify their clients' actions. This case appeared to be no exception. During a preliminary hearing, Noah's attorney stated that at the time of the murder, Noah was undergoing treatment for potential schizophrenia under the care of a psychiatrist. The lawyer also mentioned that Noah had sustained an injury in Chester County, Pennsylvania, approximately 3 weeks prior to the crime. She elaborated that due to this head injury, her client experienced gaps in memory and other issues. However, she did not specify the cause or severity of the injury. In May 2021, Anuka pleaded guilty to charges of first-degree murder and first-degree conspiracy. Her lawyers negotiated a deal with prosecutors, wherein she agreed to testify against Noah regarding his intent to end Madison's life. According to court documents, several individuals, including those close to the victim, informed the police about Noah's alleged alter ego, a second personality. Prosecutors contended that Noah Health had spread this information as part of a premeditated plan to murder Madison and later used this narrative in court. After 2 years of awaiting justice, the trial began on October 20, 2022, in Newcastle County. During the proceedings, approximately 30 witnesses were called by Deputy Attorneys General Matt Foley and JNDS. The courtroom displayed hours of video recordings of Noah's interrogations with state police detectives. The audience listened to Noah's altering narratives until he ultimately confessed. The defense challenged this evidence by emphasizing that their client was interrogated for too long. Attorney Monica Jerome noted that detectives manipulated the interrogation process. Noah received guidance on what to say and was subjected to pressure, but it was clear to everyone that this was simply a desperate attempt to justify the actions of the accused by any available means. The prosecution also presented text messages exchanged between Noah and Annika, detailing their plan for the crime. Faced with this evidence, the defense tried to convince the court that someone else had control over Noah's device and that he wasn't the one messaging Annika. Noah's mother and brother were called to testify sequentially, giving conflicting accounts several times. Nikki stated that her son was not wet when he returned home on the evening of October 2nd, while David claimed his brother was wet and looked like he'd been in a swamp. Nikki mentioned that shortly after Noah's arrival, Anuka entered the house calmly. In contrast, David said she entered angrily, slamming the door. Prosecutor Matt Frawley asked Nikki if she had discussed the evidence against Noah with him. She replied no. However, prosecutors played an audio recording of a phone call between Noah and his mother from a month before the trial, where they discussed surveillance footage from an elementary school. In the conversation, Noah mentioned his face wasn't visible in the video, where he and Anuka were seen near the elementary school about an hour before Madison's murder. Nikki reacted with relief. The video showed an African-American of similar height and build as Noah carrying a baseball bat and walking into woods with a girl. The defense questioned relatives about head injuries Noah allegedly suffered on September 13, 2020, and another unconfirmed injury from a bicycle fall just hours before police interrogations on October 4th. Noah's lawyers suggested these injuries might have caused dissociative amnesia in their attempt to justify his statements. Faced with the claim he made to the police, the prosecutors questioned whether the injury was part of a conspiracy to murder Madison. The defense contested this point somewhat uncertainly. Annika confirmed all the prosecution's arguments during her 3-hour testimony in court. In her account, she calmly explained how Noah convinced her that Madison was speaking ill of her behind her back. Friends and relatives of the victim, however, emphasized that Madison never spoke negatively about her friends. After 8 days of court sessions and presenting over 250 pieces of evidence, the jury took only 3 hours to reach a final verdict. Noah Sharp was found guilty on all charges, including first-degree murder, and was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. When the jury's decision was announced, Noah and his mother showed no emotion. Noah simply turned and smiled at his mother. The Madison family cried in relief. Before leaving the courtroom, Heather Madison's mother uttered a phrase her daughter had used before: "Choose light, not darkness. Love conquers all." She also expressed gratitude, saying, "We want to thank our friends and family. This has been a 2-year process, and we couldn't have done this without their love and constant support." She continued by thanking the community and specifically Newark Charter School and its administration and families. Additionally, she appreciated those who supported the Love Wins 5K over the past 2 years and backed the Madison Sparrow Memorial Scholarship aimed at aiding future educators. Regarding Annika, when Noah's guilty verdict was announced, prosecutors stated that according to Delaware state law, she would be recommended a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 30 years, as she was a minor at the time of the crime. On April 10, 2019, 17-year-old Tristan Borlas, who murdered his parents at their family home in Deep Gap, North Carolina. That Wednesday evening, a girl called emergency services, reporting a large amount of blood in her house and 3 missing family members, her parents and her younger brother, none of whom were answering their phones. The police immediately dispatched officers to Deep Gap, a small town near the border of Watauga and Wilkes counties. Upon arrival, officers discovered blood on the stone steps leading to the house, on the porch, and on the doormats. The search revealed the body of Jeffrey Borras under a hammock behind an outbuilding, with multiple stab wounds to the abdomen. Later, around 10:30 p.m., they found a pickup truck hidden in the woods. Inside, they discovered the body of a woman covered with a blanket and bags of mulch piled on top. Jeffrey Borras, Tristan's father, was born on April 16, 1975, into a deeply religious family. His father, Pastor Harry Borras, was a member of the Conservative Church of the Spiritual Bible Brotherhood, a strict religious movement. Jeffrey was raised in an environment of strict religious discipline, constant Bible study, and moral edification. Entertainment, laughter, and bright clothing were strictly forbidden. Good deeds, charity, missionary work, love for enemies, and nonviolence were considered virtues. Jeffrey internalized these teachings, growing up to be a kind, loving, gentle, and patient individual. During his youth, he secured a summer job at a water park in Missouri. On his first day of work, he met a charming girl who would later become an important part of his life. The family was known for their strong faith and active involvement in their church and community. Jeffrey's upbringing in such a devout household was intended to instill a deep sense of morality and duty. Despite this, the family was not immune to tragedy. The events of April 10, 2019 were shocking and inexplicable to those who knew them. Tristan, raised in the same religious environment, committed an act that was completely at odds with the values he had been taught. As the investigation unfolded, details about the family's dynamics and Tristan's state of mind began to emerge. Neighbors and friends were bewildered, struggling to understand what could have driven a young man from such a devout family to commit such a heinous act. A girl named Tanya met a boy named Jeffrey. They were the same age, shared the same views, and had similar upbringings. Like Jeffrey, Tanya grew up in a family where Christian values were central. She was patient, humble, and selfless, and saw in Jeffrey an ideal future husband and caring father. She gave Jeffrey a photo of an elderly couple holding hands, saying, "One day, this will be us." Jeffrey's mother, Katie Brown, had prayed for a God-loving wife for her son, and her prayers were answered. The young lovers married and lived according to their religious beliefs. The photo was kept in the family album. Later, the young couple had their first child, a charming girl named Taylor, followed by 3 more children. Tristan was the youngest. Taylor, as the oldest, took care of and supported her siblings. She was especially close to Tristan, acting as his best friend despite their age difference. Following their religious beliefs, Jeffrey and Tanya aimed to instill the mindset of God in their children's hearts. When their 4 children grew up, they adopted 4 more boys from an orphanage. Their loving family grew to 8 children: Taylor, twins Ka and Alexis, Misery, Al, Stephen, Miku, and Tristan. The children were forbidden from using mobile phones and social networks until a certain age, and asceticism in needs and desires was encouraged. Boys were forbidden to date until after high school, and Bible study was mandatory. Despite these rules, the children grew up like any other boys and girls, with their parents showing no distinction between their biological and adopted children, giving all equal care and affection. Their home had a harmonious atmosphere, with their mother paying close attention to the children and praying frequently. The couple believed in setting a virtuous example for their children. When a hurricane hit Haiti, Tanya sold her expensive wedding ring and sent the money to a fund for constructing housing for the victims, replacing her ring with a simple, cheap one. In 2015, Taylor graduated from high school and moved to Boone to attend Appalachian State University. Tristan lost his only friend and felt alone. Although Taylor visited whenever she could, she had her own life, leaving Tristan at home. From childhood, he had rebelled against the restrictions and religious views of his parents, and he was frustrated by the ban on using a phone to communicate on social media, an essential part of modern teenage life. With Taylor gone, his arguments with his parents increased. In December 2017, the family experienced positive changes when Jeffrey, Tanya, and their children moved to a new house in Deep Gap, Watauga County, North Carolina. This house, located on a dirt road leading into the forest, was much more spacious and closer to Tanya's mother, Robin, allowing her to help with the younger children. However, for Tristan, the move might not have been entirely positive since he had to change schools. He attended a local high school in Watauga and began participating in athletics. The other children found jobs as counselors at summer camps. Despite appearances, not everything was fine. Tristan's behavior started causing problems. In 2018, the school required him to attend therapy sessions for anger and impulsive behavior. By 2019, despite his excellent abilities, he struggled with some school subjects, which worsened over time. Once a great student, Tristan became indifferent to studying. He frequently arrived late to class and sometimes refused to study altogether, often putting on headphones and appearing disengaged. Some teachers tried to help Tristan, and he initially accepted their assistance, but his interest waned quickly. At home, he continued to argue with his parents, even though he was eventually allowed to use a phone. Tristan spent a lot of time on the internet and referred to himself as a musician on Instagram. Taylor, still interested in her siblings' lives, noticed Tristan frequently argued with their mother about religious topics. She also discovered his other problems at school. She tried to talk to him, but their relationship was no longer trusting. Eventually, Tristan became friends with a girl from the religious community, Evelyn Faith Jackson. They started dating, ignoring the ban on intimate relationships, and sometimes smoked illegal substances. Tristan often complained about his mother, who discussed his behavior with him at night, making him tired and unable to concentrate at school. He worried about his problems and not meeting his mother's expectations. He felt he could be himself around his father, but not his mother. On April 10, 2019, many of Tristan's secrets were revealed. Surveillance cameras were installed in the barn, and his old phone, which he sometimes used secretly, became an access point. That day, Tanya took his phone and read messages about intimate topics and illegal substances. Tristan at school saw incoming messages, and his shocked parents texted him in the family chat about what they found. That same day, Sherry King, an English teacher, called Tristan's mother to complain about his academic performance and behavior. At the trial, she will say Tanya called her back, informing her that she and her husband would come to school to discuss it with Tristan. Sherry told Tristan about this, and he was very surprised. His parents left the youngest child with his grandmother and went to the high school. They drove home in silence. At the trial, Tristan will say his mother was tense and frowned, constantly flipping through messages on his phone. At home, the conversation lasted about an hour and a half. Tanya sent a message to her mother at 4 p.m., saying Tristan wasn't upset about losing his phone and car keys until his grades and behavior improved, and that she would soon pick up the youngest child. After that, the conversation continued. According to Tristan, he and his mother talked about studying, relationships with girls, and illegal substances. Tanya told him she didn't want him to study other religions. Besides Christianity, he was forced to listen to her and realized his many flaws. They even made a list of qualities he should develop to become a better person: compassion, honor, honesty, etc. The police would later find this list. According to Tristan, his mother approached him from behind, wrapped her arms around his neck, and he instinctively jumped up, turned around, and accidentally hit her with his elbow. He claimed his mother had never done anything like this before, which is why he freaked out. His mother, scared, grabbed scissors and moved toward him. Shocked, he stabbed her with a knife, believing he was defending himself, then ran to his father for help. A forensic examination would later find no evidence that his mother tried to strangle him. During the trial, the prosecution showed photographs of Tanya Borlas's neck with a broken bone. A psychologist testified that Tristan Borlas was mentally sane, but experiencing depersonalization and derealization. However, the court and jury dismissed this, considering Tristan a manipulator and dangerous. According to Tristan's statement, he did not understand why his father was running away or why he stabbed him, even though he begged for help. He remembered his father taking a stone and saying, "Tristan, don't do this," but believed his father would rather die than harm his son. Neighbors reported hearing loud screams at about 5:30 p.m. that Wednesday from the Borlas family's property. Afterward, Tristan returned home and vomited, which a psychologist indicated as a sign of stress. However, the jury disagreed. The autopsy report showed Jeffrey Borlas had multiple stab wounds to the left chest and back, cuts on his arms and hands, and scratch marks on his skull and forehead. Tanya Borlas's autopsy indicated several stab wounds to the left chest, back, and arm, as well as injuries likely from neck compression. The results indicated that the parents were defending themselves, not attacking. Tristan had the chance to flee from his mother, and even if he was mentally unstable and acted in self-defense, killing his father, his subsequent actions were suspicious. Tristan returned home, dragged his mother's body into the truck, concealed it under a blanket, then spent about an hour cleaning the crime scene, even using a hose to wash the porch. Around 8:30 p.m., Tristan arrived at his grandmother's to pick up his younger brother. Robin found this odd, but Tristan claimed their parents went to the store and ran out of time. 20 minutes later, Robin received a call from another grandson, complaining that his parents weren't answering their phones and hadn't picked him up from his part-time job as usual. Robin called Alexis, asking her to get her brother. They decided to meet at Jeffrey and Tanya's house to figure out what happened. As Robin approached the house, she noticed blood on the porch but thought it was from the animals the couple bred. Entering the house to get a flashlight, she saw blood everywhere. Alexis then ran in, saying she found a body under a hammock near the animal shed and saw Tristan, with blood on his face, driving away. Alexis called emergency services, and the operator advised her to lock herself in the car with her family and wait for the police. The police arrived 10 minutes later. After several hours outside and talking to officers, they went to the station and were informed that Jeffrey and Tanya Borlas had been found dead. During the crime scene inspection, detectives discovered a video surveillance system inside the house. They found the monitor broadcasting live video and requested a warrant to obtain the data from the service company. Meanwhile, Tristan contacted his friend Evelyn and went to her house. Evelyn noticed several scratches on his forehead and hands, but Tristan claimed they were from an argument with his parents and playing with the dog. Evelyn recalled seeing 3 scratches on his forehead, a wound on his arm, a cut on his finger, and a bruised nail. Following the crime, Tristan swiftly took to Snapchat, sharing a photo of his injuries, attributing them to his father's dog, as recounted by his girlfriend. She confirmed the injuries depicted in the photo mirrored what she had witnessed earlier that evening. Tristan opted to spend the night at Evelyn's residence. The subsequent morning, they initially planned to attend school, but had a change of heart. Suspecting Tristan's intent to flee his parental constraints, Evelyn extended an offer for him to seek refuge with one of her relatives, an offer he accepted. They embarked on a journey to another state on April 11th. Meanwhile, the sheriff's office gained access to video surveillance footage at the Boris household, shedding light on the intricate details of the crime. An arrest warrant was swiftly issued for Tristan. Officer Matthew received intelligence suggesting Tristan's presence in Tennessee, prompting him to enlist the assistance of Robin for the apprehension. Tristan, accompanied by Evelyn, noticed the telltale blue lights of police cars trailing them, prompting suspicions that his parents had reported the car stolen. Attempting to evade capture, he ultimately succumbed to the inevitable, his Ford encircled by police vehicles. Evelyn's shock was palpable as she witnessed her boyfriend being handcuffed and escorted into a police cruiser. Officers observed Tristan's lack of distress or concern. Subsequent to his interrogation on April 11th, 2019, Tristan, a mere month shy of his 18th birthday, confessed to all charges, leading to his incarceration without bail. Later, officers secured warrants to investigate Tristan's Snapchat account and his arsenal of 5 phones for potential evidence. A thorough search was also conducted at a residence on Orchard Road, unearthing a plethora of items. Additionally, a search was carried out on a Ford F-150, revealing further incriminating evidence. The meticulous investigation of Tristan's girlfriend's residence in Boone revealed a plethora of additional items, ranging from a pillowcase to a zip-up hoodie and a notebook. Tristan's feeble attempt at self-defense crumbled under the weight of evidence, leaving his narrative in shambles. The somber procession of Jeff and Tanya's funeral procession on April 17, 2019. With solemn reverence, Pastors William Cran and Brad Gray presided over the ceremony, offering solace to the grieving hearts of the children left behind. Despite the weight of their loss, these resilient souls found the courage to compose a poignant obituary, a testament to the enduring love and selflessness of their departed parents. In the aftermath of the funeral, Taylor visits her incarcerated brother for the first time. What she encountered within the cold confines of the prison walls shattered her illusions. Tristan's demeanor betrayed not an ounce of remorse, but instead brimmed with a misplaced sense of entitlement, as he sought to deflect blame onto their unsuspecting family. Disillusioned and heartbroken, Taylor left, her faith in her brother shattered. Undeterred by her initial disappointment, Taylor returned for a second visit on May 11th, hoping for a semblance of redemption. Yet, Tristan's callous indifference remained steadfast, further alienating him from his grieving sister. It was then that the family made the agonizing decision to sever all ties with Tristan, recognizing that his presence posed a threat to their emotional well-being. As the wheels of justice turned, Tristan's trial commenced on February 16, 2022, a solemn affair marked by solemnity and gravitas. Here Tristan, faced with the consequences of his actions, expressed contrition, acknowledging the gravity of his deeds. He concurred with his family's damning assessments of his character, acknowledging the necessity of cutting ties for their own safety. On March 3, 2024, Tristan Borlas was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, a fitting denouement to a tragic tale of loss and betrayal. While recognizing Tristan's mental health struggles as mitigating factors, Judge Horn emphasized the absence of psychotic disorders in the psychologist's evaluation, affirming the severity of Tristan's crimes and the irreversible consequences of his actions. Although anxiety and depression can indeed be worsened by persistent use of illicit substances, it is peculiar that neither Tristan's family, nor his lawyer, nor Tristan himself elaborated on the motives behind the crime. It suggests either a lack of full comprehension on Tristan's part or a deliberate ignorance. Conversely, Tristan, a self-loathing teenager with low self-esteem prone to depression and displaying active symptoms of anxiety. Tristan recounted experiencing panic attacks, which his mother, having undergone similar experiences, assisted him in managing. Assertion that children, inherently immoral due to original sin, require correction through education and strict discipline to cultivate proper behavior, may further elucidate Tristan's upbringing. Raised within rigid boundaries, he constantly grappled with feelings of inadequacy, exacerbated by jealousy towards his parents' attention to his new siblings. Initially rebellious, he spiraled into a depressive state, compounded by substance abuse, panic attacks, depersonalization, and derealization. His resistance to his parents, religiosity, and the pressure to conform to his mother's ideals culminated in a jointly composed list of necessary changes, serving as his breaking point. Could this tragedy have been averted in a truly nurturing family environment?